After I cheated, my husband's revenge prank escalated, spiraling our marriage into tragic ruin. Approaching April's tea, I eagerly awaited a prank from my husband, Lester. Over the years, our history as pranksters had seen an annual increase in the severity of our jokes. The streak of mischief began with me one warm day when Les and I went out. Despite wearing a buttoned-up jacket, I claimed to feel a chill as we strolled through the mall. Suddenly, I removed my jacket to reveal a t-shirt with the words, "I am with stupid," complete with an arrow pointing sideways. Standing right next to me, he couldn't initially discern what was on my t-shirt, only noticing the amused reactions of passers-by. It took him a while to realize that every time I shifted position, it was to ensure the arrow on my t-shirt was pointing at him. His face turned crimson, and thus commenced our official prank war. Then came the year when I received an official-looking email, supposedly from the local health department, claiming I had been listed as a lovemaking contact of an Anthony Sanders and instructing me to undergo immediate testing. What I hadn't anticipated was the CC line, including everyone in my office, suggesting they had received the same alarming message. Most of them knew Anthony as an old college boyfriend, oblivious to the fact that I hadn't seen him in over a year, let alone been involved. Lovingly, Lester, you got me good. Last year, I edited a photo, replacing my husband's average-sized member with a comically tiny one, and sent it around his office. Truth be told, he's actually above average in that department. He was furious, spending 2 nights away before even considering coming home. No matter how much I apologized, I ended up resorting to an offer of 3 specific favors just to coax him back 3 bed acts he couldn't refuse. Once home and appeased, he claimed our pranks had spiraled out of control, vowing never to retaliate or prank me again. His promise seemed sincere, but I didn't buy it. I could almost see the gears turning in his head, plotting his revenge. I was certain this year would showcase the darkest corners of his devious mind. I waited, a mix of anticipation and dread. I went to extreme eavesdropping on his calls, planting a recorder in his car, even scrutinizing our finances for anything suspicious. I was determined not to fall for his prank this time. Yet, my snooping turned up nothing incriminating. He was far cleverer than I had given him credit for. As March passed, Lester appeared unchanged at home while I scrutinized his every move. From midnight on March 16th, I was on high alert, but nothing occurred right after midnight, leaving me on edge. There were still hours for him to spring his plan. I swore to be prepared for whatever he had up his sleeve. The following morning, April set, when I descended to the kitchen, he casually offered to whip up breakfast, a rare gesture that immediately raised a red flag. There was no chance I'd consume anything he prepared. I claimed I was in the mood for just cereal that morning. While pouring myself a bowl and adding milk, I discreetly sniffed it, on the lookout for any added substances. Nothing. A tentative taste confirmed its normality. I stubbornly skipped the coffee, citing a reduction in my caffeine intake. Truthfully, I avoided it because he made it. I observed him preparing his beloved ham, egg, and cheese English muffin, almost tempted to ask for one despite the risk. Post-breakfast, we both got ready for work. Amidst checking my toothpaste for tampering and ensuring my cologne retained its usual fragrance and a skunk odor, everything appeared normal, except for my sore anxiety. I inspected my car for any suspicious devices, wishing for one of those border-crossing mirrors on a stick to scrutinize beneath it. All seemed regular, yet my heart drummed loudly when I started the engine, testing the brakes unnecessarily. I scolded myself Lester wouldn't resort to anything physically damaging. I repeated that to reassure myself, but doubt lingered. He was seriously upset about my last prank. At work, my enthusiastic best friend, Marta, eagerly greeted me and expressed her curiosity about Lester's antics the previous night. I had confided in Marta about my concerns regarding Lester's impending April Fool's trick, recalling her support for my prank from the previous year. She jokingly requested an unaltered version of the photo, or even better, a private viewing in our bedroom. I noted her eagerness for some excitement in her life. I shared with Marta that Lester had been relatively quiet, but I was convinced he was plotting something. I could sense it in the air at night. Marta playfully commented on her love for slipping song lyrics into conversations, prompting a chuckle from me. I believe he's prolonging my suspense just to push me over the edge. Well, he doesn't have far to go right now, but mark my words, whatever he pulls, I won't fall for it. He may be the prince of pranks, but I am the queen of jokes. We laughed, and then I finally indulged in my much-delayed morning coffee. I checked my desk for unexpected surprises and went about my work relatively normally, though occasional thoughts of what might await me later lingered. The first time my desk phone rang, I practically leaped out of my chair, chuckling at my own heightened nerves. Nothing out of the ordinary happened for the rest of the day. I half expected a delivery of risque items that would accidentally be revealed in front of my colleagues, but thankfully, nothing of the sort occurred. As the workday's end neared, My anxiety skyrocketed. I hit the road, nearly missing the red light as my mind fixated on what awaited me at home. I gave myself a light slap to refocus on driving safely. Upon arriving home, I started preparing dinner. Lester arrived at his usual time, appearing completely drained. I suspected it was an act, anticipating more theatrics. From him soon. I asked if he had a tough day, dealing with too many graduates struggling with basic math. Lester responded that my remark hit too close to home to be funny. He explained that his mood wasn't due to a challenging day, but rather an exasperating one. The quarterly report deadline had kept him occupied with mundane details and figure cross-checking usually done before lunch. Today's struggle to reconcile two totals that were supposed to match took an extra 4 hours. He even missed lunch and considered calling to say he'd be late for dinner. Fortunately, he caught the error, wrapped up the report before clocking out, and expressed being absolutely famished. He hoped dinner was on its way within 20 minutes. I suggested he fix himself a drink while I finished up, to which he responded positively, appreciating the idea. Lester leaned in, planting a kiss on my cheek before heading to the cupboard where we stored the liquor. He grabbed the bourbon and mixed himself a drink before settling in the living room, tuning in to reruns of Swamp People. It was comical to think he'd ever venture into a place teeming with mosquitoes, alligators, and snakes. I suspected he had a soft spot for people with Cajun accents. During dinner, I attempted to strike up a conversation, but my focus was primarily on uncovering the impending prank. Eventually, I probed, asking if Lester had anything planned for the night. He responded, stating that he had nothing planned. After the debacle with the quarterly report, he emphasized that he didn't even consider bringing work home and expressed his desire to unwind with me by his side. Playfully teasing, he mentioned that since his favorite girl wasn't there, I would have to do. I nudged him in response. After dinner, as I filled the dishwasher with the dishes, I suggested watching a movie and snacking on some popcorn. Lester showed interest, and after preparing the popcorn in the microwave, I brought it in a big bowl to the living room, along with our usual drinks to relax. I asked Lester what he wanted to watch, mentioning that while I typically preferred movies with closeness and roughness, I was open to his choice for the night. I suggested Roadhouse, noting its blend of romance, nudity, and violence enough to mention Patrick Swayze's physique. Lester chuckled in response. Sounds good to me. I haven't seen that in a while. I love the part when the stuffed polar bear falls on the thug. Was it a polar bear or a regular bear? I thought it was a polar bear, but we can see. We were watching the movie and eating popcorn. I had a couple of rum and cokes to Lester's bourbons, and at last I was finally beginning to relax and let down my guard. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and my internal alarm went off. This is it, I told myself immediately. No one comes to our house unannounced after dark. I immediately put my mind on DEFCON alert status and was ready to spoil whatever dirty trick he had devised. Lester, of course, vehemently denied knowing who it might be. Yeah, right. I went to the door and opened it up. I was surprised to see there was a guy, not just an average man, but a huge biker guy at the door. 2 others were on their bikes in the driveway. I shook my head in disbelief. I thought, Lester, this is going to be good. I greeted the scarred, tattooed biker with a knowing smile, expressing my awareness of the situation. He apologized for disturbing me and asked if this was where the party was. Responding affirmatively, I slung my arm around his waist, leading him to the center of the living room, noticing his firm abs and bulging biceps. My husband, seeing me with this stranger, leaped off the couch, bewildered. He questioned who the stranger was, and I played along, stating that he was here to fulfill my fantasy. My husband realized it was an April Fool's joke and expressed his initial confusion. I acknowledged the prank and continued with the act, telling the stranger, whom my husband referred to as Paul, that his prank was over and he could leave. The stranger, calling himself the Bandit, insisted on staying, and I affirmed that I wanted him to stay. I turned to the Bandit, planting an exaggerated kiss on him, much to my husband's dismay. Lester rushed over, and the Bandit grabbed him by the throat, making him stumble and choke. Chuckling, the Bandit pulled me close, caressing my backside while kissing me. I reciprocated, sensing his arousal. Lester charged again, and the Bandit knocked him down with a single punch. Addressing me, the Bandit asked if he should handle Lester or if he should stay and watch. I chose to let Lester watch, stating that it would teach him not to mess with me. The Bandit agreed and stepped outside to inform the others. Inside, one of the men scanned the room and questioned what was happening, noting that it didn't resemble a party. I explained that the lady referring to myself wanted to be involved with bikers before heading to the actual party. Commenting on my assets, they discussed their plans, with one expressing the intention to take my rear first. They noticed Lester on the floor and learned he was my husband, whom I wanted to watch. I suggested tying him to a chair and taping his mouth, offering the materials from the garage. Lester protested, declaring that regardless of the situation being a joke or not, it marked the end of our marriage. I responded, accusing him of setting it up and now being upset because I wasn't playing along as he intended. As Lester lunged again, the bikers subdued him and convincingly pinned him to the chair. I wondered if their coordination was rehearsed. The bikers inquired about getting the party started and asked about drinks. I directed them to the liquor cabinet and the fridge for a couple of beers. The bandit turned to me, asking how I wanted to start and how far Lester had suggested they go. I responded, asking the bandit about Lester's instructions, and he looked puzzled. He mentioned I could go all the way however I wanted. In a referenced version, he did it right. If we're going through with this, I could use some help setting the mood. Got anything stronger than liquor? Absolutely, I always carry something. He fetched something intriguing from his bike. A sip later, I found myself swapping kisses with all three of them, smirking at Lester, who seemed to struggle to break free. Approaching me, the bandit declared, "Time to dance, darling," tearing off my dress and swiftly losing my underwear. Soon he was bare, as were his companions. Panic started to grip me. I hadn't anticipated Lester would allow things to escalate like this. I shouted to Lester, "Consider this a lesson if you try to outsmart me." Engaging with his friend, I sensed his imminent climax and attempted to pull away. "Too bad your pleasure isn't our concern. Your job is to satisfy us," they retorted. The following hour felt unreal, despite my objections and resistance in the midst of this chaotic group. At the end of it all, anger boiled within me towards Lester for orchestrating this and then allowing these men to subject me to such things. Each time I glanced at Lester in the chair, rage surged, yet I masked my distress. I wanted him to believe I relished it, but I couldn't let him think his prank succeeded. After a couple of hours, the bikers departed. My movements were labored, but I managed to reach the kitchen and grab a sharp knife. When I went to release Lester, I discovered his wrists and ankles were injured. His ankles were bleeding, the ropes having torn into his skin. That seemed to have helped him, certainly. I anticipated his explosion, maybe even a physical outburst. Once the ropes and duct tape were finally off, standing there, I glared at him, ready for his expected fury. But instead of a verbal or physical reaction, he looked at me with silent rage, shoved me aside, and ascended the stairs. I retreated to the downstairs bathroom to cleanse the remnants of the bikers from my skin, noticing numerous hickeys scattered across various parts of my body. I remained in the bathroom when the front door slammed shut. Moments later, the screech of Lester's car signaled his departure. I assumed he'd sulk in a motel, a pattern had shown before. I silently celebrated my victory in the annual April Fool's prank and retired to bed. Saturday morning arrived and my phone buzzed incessantly. It was Marta, asking me to spill the details about what Lester had done. I responded, saying he wouldn't believe it, and suggested meeting for lunch at Friday's. Marta agreed, urging me not to tease. At Thank God It's Friday we indulged in our meal, and I recounted the actual biker encounter that was meant to be a sham, along with Lester's furious reaction. Marta expressed disbelief that I was involved in that, especially considering Lester had set me up for it. Playfully, switching to a terrible southern accent, she pretended to swoon, and I chuckled. I explained how Lester had tried to deceive me with a prank involving facing a biker, only to shout April Fools afterward. I shared that I had outplayed his prank by turning it into a real event. Although I hadn't planned to go that far, it worked in a strange way. I doubted Lester would ever try something like that again. Marta questioned whether I was positive Lester had set it up, expressing disbelief that he would orchestrate something so extreme. The possibility of a messy divorce was raised, and there was a suggestion to get rid of any video, with a cheeky request for a copy. While I dismissed Marta's last remark, her earlier words triggered a troubling thought. What if it wasn't a setup? The idea of a potential divorce weighed heavily on me, a dire possibility I was hesitant to consider. It felt like I might have shattered my marriage. But swiftly, I pushed the thought away, convinced it had to be a setup. That's what I stuck to, reassuring myself and trying to believe it. Then, a realization struck me, prompting a question about the last time a biker showed up at my door looking for a party. I wished it were true, and Marta acknowledged the possibility that I was right. The focus shifted to Lester's whereabouts, speculating that he might be sulking in some motel, furious that I had outplayed his prank. Just then, my phone buzzed, and I told Marta to hold on, thinking it might be Lester. However, disappointment washed over me as I realized it wasn't him, but an unfamiliar number. Upon answering the call, a voice I didn't recognize asked if I was Carrie Lynch. Inwardly groaning, I assumed it was a telemarketer and preemptively declined any offers. When the caller identified themselves as the police and mentioned injuries sustained by my husband, I dismissed it as another part of Lester's failed prank. Despite the assurance from the caller, claiming to be a detective named Fredericks, that they had checked my house and spoken to Lester, I doubted the legitimacy of the situation. Refusing to play along, I told the supposed detective that I would be home in an hour or whenever I pleased, If he wanted to talk, he could come by later. I ended the call abruptly. Marta expressed concern about the police calling me and suggested I should go see Lester. I shared my skepticism, unsure if the caller was genuinely a detective or just another one of Lester's ploys. Convinced that Lester was taking the joke too far, I expressed a desire not to dwell on it and proposed getting dessert, specifically craving chocolate. I arrived home post-lunch to find Lester absent, which wasn't unexpected. Just as I started to remove my jacket and hang it up, the doorbell interrupted. Letting out a heavy sigh, I made my way to the door. A female police officer and a man who seemed to be a detective stood there, flashing badges and requesting entry. The shock hitmate was real, entirely unlike what I had anticipated. Doubts crept in. Perhaps they weren't really law enforcement. I asked to see their identification. They presented badges, ID cards, driver's licenses, and business cards. Everything checked out. Apologizing for my initial skepticism, I welcomed them in. That's when I remembered I hadn't tidied up from the previous night. The living room remained untouched since I'd gone to bed, displaying empty beer and liquor bottles, stains on the couch and rug, and, of course, the chair. The detective focused on the chair where Lester had been bound, noting the cut ropes, used duct tape, and bloodstains. I hadn't realized there was so much blood. The detective asked if this was where my husband was tied up, and I confirmed, adding that it was a bit more complicated. When asked about the complexity, I explained that my husband had orchestrated an ill-conceived April Fool's joke to make me think a biker gang would attack me. I turned the tables on him, making him believe I wanted something that made him uncomfortable. He got angry and stormed off when I freed him. When questioned about who initially tied him up, I mentioned a biker named Bandit and a couple of others. The detective shared that they had already spoken to Bandit, who was cooperating for a more lenient sentence. According to Bandit, I had invited them for a party, requested medications, and engaged in consensual activities. He alleged that I instructed him to tie up my husband to watch the event, claiming it was our shared interest. The detective needed to know if this was true or if they should pursue exploitation charges against Bandit as well. I attempted to explain that I had tried to stop it, but my efforts were in vain. I was trying to teach my husband a lesson in response to the mess he created, and I just went along with it. I hoped the detective could understand. Tears interrupted my words, and I paused before asking about Lester's condition and whether he was still at the ER. The detective explained that Lester was more angry than anything else. His wrists and ankles were bandaged and sore, as expected. Lester had been discharged after a couple of hours but came to the police station to press charges. The doctor anticipated a physical recovery, expressing relief that Lester wasn't seriously hurt. I acknowledged that it was his fault, and I didn't want to be made a fool of. The detective commented that I handled it effectively, but reminded me that they were not the judge of fault. Judges and juries would determine that soon. Suddenly, the detective stated that they were arresting me for assault and wrongful confinement of my husband. Additionally, they advised me to get checked for an STD, as one of the bikers I was with had a severe and persistent STD. The detective informed me of my right to an attorney. In a plea for understanding, I explained that it was meant to be a prank on me, and I retaliated. I protested against the arrest, arguing that it was Lester's fault, but the detective insisted that I should tell that to the judge. Subsequently, I found myself in jail, attempting to post bail. However, I discovered that my cards had been canceled. Despite the humiliation, I called my father and fabricated a story until he revealed that Lester had already contacted him. My father, who was close to Lester, berated me for minutes while I sobbed. Eventually, he agreed to bail me out and take me home. Upon arriving home, I sent a text to Lester pleading for a discussion to clarify things. His reply was cold. "Everything is clear to me. My response is coming soon." I hoped for a face-to-face or at least a call. Instead, I received divorce papers citing physical exploitation and emotional torment. I cried once more. I had allowed a foolish prank to ruin my marriage, an impractical joke, to say the least. The trial progressed swiftly. Bandit took the stand as the primary witness. His testimony detailed arriving at the wrong address, being invited by me and others to a party, tying up my husband at my behest, and engaging in consensual relations with me. In exchange for testifying against me, he received a minor sentence for the confinement charge. However, it was my husband's testimony that cut the deepest. He admitted to our history of pranks, but insisted he had vowed never to deceive me again, as he believed I trusted him. The events of that night shook him to the core, shocking him to an unfathomable degree. Under oath, Lester denied any prior contact with Bandit, any consent to a pretend or real foursome involving his wife, and declared that his love and respect for me vanished that night. Displaying the scars on his wrists and ankles, he mentioned they were a lasting reminder of why he could never trust me again. His admission that he might struggle to trust any woman caused tears even among some female jurors. My case crumbled when it was my turn to testify. Tearfully narrating my version, I sensed the jury's disapproval, especially from the female members I had hoped to sway. Guilt weighed on me, evident to all, and unsurprisingly, the verdict was guilty. I received a 2-year sentence of leniency that could have been harsher. Back in county jail, I awaited transfer to prison when space became available. The final divorce papers arrived during my incarceration, but I barely acknowledged the settlement. One day, Lester visited, and I was puzzled by his presence. He sarcastically remarked that prison suits me. I acknowledged that I deserved the sarcasm and expressed regret for what I did to him, even if he didn't orchestrate it. Lester responded, stating it was too little too late, and that he still believed I had set him up. He presented a hypothetical scenario, suggesting a twisted motive on his part to orchestrate a divorce with the best terms of slicker than 50-50th split. He detailed a cunning plan involving squirreling away cash, bribing bikers, deceiving cops, and taking a minor sentence. He mentioned the need for ties to a gang, hinting at someone at work, whose brother needed his approval for a promotion. Lester expressed his shock when I took the situation to a level he hadn't anticipated. He claimed that seeing me enjoy it crushed him. Despite feeling torn between wanting to end both of us, he opted to put me behind bars, acknowledging his correctness. Lester stated that we were both fools in the mess, but I was the one behind bars. He questioned who the bigger fool was.
I'm Tom Williams. I used to be married to Kayla Williams. We were together for 17 years before everything fell apart. Naturally, I got blamed for it. Divorce courts in this country always seem to side with the woman, giving her full custody so she can turn the kids against their father. It feels like the divorce laws were designed by people who hate men. We had 2 kids, a 14-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter. I thought our life was great. I loved my wife, and I believed she loved me. Our kids were smart, athletic, and well-adjusted. Carly, our daughter, was a daddy's girl, and Josh, our son, was friendly and athletic. I was doing well as a mechanical engineer, and Kayla had a good job as an accountant. We both stayed fit and looked good. Carly idolized me. She was good at math and science and wanted to be an engineer like me. She got her driver's license at 16 and loved cars, just like I did. We spent weekends at car shows and working on my collection of old GM cars. She also helped me with home improvement projects, learning basic plumbing, electrical work, and more. While she went to her mother for girl issues, she came to me for everything else: homework, friend drama, boys, and advice. We were very close. Josh, on the other hand, wasn't into cars. He was more interested in English literature and civics and talked about becoming a lawyer. He was closer to his mom. Lately, Kayla seemed a bit off, distant and zoning out. I asked if everything was okay, but she brushed it off. One Friday evening, I came home at my usual time, 6 p.m. Kayla was already home, but there were no dinner smells, and Carly didn't greet me. I assumed she and Josh were out with friends. I went upstairs to change and saw that Kayla had laid out a little black dress, hot underwear, stockings, and 6-inch heels. It looked like we were going out, but she hadn't told me. Kayla was still in the bathroom putting on makeup when I walked in. "Where are we going, sweetheart?" I asked, starting to take off my dress shirt. "We aren't going anywhere," she replied. "Then why are you getting all dressed up with a hot outfit laid out on the bed?" "I'm going out, not we." "Really? And where exactly are you going dressed like that without me? Where are the kids?" "The kids are spending the night with friends. I'm going on a date tonight, and I probably won't be home until tomorrow morning." "What do you mean, your date, and you won't be back until morning?" "Exactly what I said. If it goes well, I'll be spending the night with him." "No way. You think I'll put up with that?" "If you want to cheat, you can wait for the divorce." "Stop being stupid. There will be no divorce. I just need this one night to prove I'm still attractive to other guys. If you really love me, you'll let me do this. If you loved me, you wouldn't even consider it. I do love you, but I need this. I'm getting older and need to feel attractive to younger men. Clarence is 10 years younger and has been flirting with me for 6 months. I finally accepted his offer. It's just one night of lovemaking to boost my ego. I'm not putting up with it. Remember our wedding vows? You're breaking them. Don't be silly, it's just one night. I promise it won't happen again. Are you stupid, or do you think I am? After breaking your vows, you think I'll trust a private promise? If you go through with this, we're done. Walk out that door, and I'll see a lawyer. Don't be an idiot. There will be no divorce. I'll come home and be the loving wife I've always been. If you try to divorce me, I'll fight, and you'll lose the house, most assets, and custody. I'll mess with your visitation and blame you for breaking up the family, making the kids hate you." You say you love me, yet you do all that? Yes, I love you, but I'll fight if you try to divorce me. I just need this one night. And in a few years, what then? When you feel old again, will you find another younger man? I promise it won't happen again. It's just lovemaking, no love. He won't take me away from you. Maybe I'll even learn something to spice up our bed life. If you do this, I've already told you the consequences. Cancel now, and we can try marriage counseling. Don't be stupid. We'll be fine. If you insist on counseling, we'll discuss it when I get back tomorrow. She continued getting ready. I changed and left the room. Later, she came downstairs dressed up, clutch in hand, checking herself in the mirror. I was in the living room when I heard a car honk outside. He's here. I've got to go. I'll see you in the morning, she said, walking over to kiss me goodbye. I turned away, and she kissed the air. She frowned at me. Fine, be that way. Once you're over your hissy fit, everything will be back to normal. She turned towards the door. I made one last plea. If you walk out that door, we're done. Think hard about whether this is worth throwing away 17 years of marriage. She turned back to me. I'm not throwing anything away. I'll be back and everything will go back to normal. With that, she opened the door and walked out. I started crying, mourning the loss of my marriage and the woman I loved for 20 years, 17 years of marriage, a year of engagement, and 2 years of exclusive dating. She never showed any dissatisfaction. We had a decent bed life, and she never asked for more. We hadn't been fighting. We discussed and resolved our disagreements. After half an hour, realizing she wasn't coming back, I began executing my plan. We had a large 4-bedroom house. The master bedroom, Carly's room, Josh's room, and a guest bedroom with a private bathroom. This would now be my temporary bedroom. It took 2 hours to move out of our old bedroom. I knew our divorce wouldn't favor me since we lived in a no-fault state. Divorce laws here were biased against men, giving wives the house, kids, child support, and maintenance, leaving husbands with the bills. I set up my new living space and went to my home office to manage our finances. I had an account in my name for buying her gifts. I transferred half of our joint checking and savings into it, paid off, and canceled our credit cards, then applied for new ones in my name. I planned to transfer my direct deposit and split our investments on Monday. I poured myself a Jim Beam and went to bed, but couldn't sleep well. The bed felt empty without her, and my mind raced with thoughts of what I could have done to stop her. Should I have stopped her physically? Gone after the guy with a bat or weapon? It was a long, restless night. At dawn, I showered to wake up, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, and had breakfast. By 9 a.m., Kayla waltzed back into the house. "Good morning, honey. I'm home just like I promised," she said cheerfully. I ignored her. My rage had built up overnight. I realized I didn't deserve her disrespect and that stopping her wouldn't have changed anything. If I had stopped her last night, she would have tried again. My love for her turned into hate, fueled by her disrespect, threats, and dismissive attitude. I spent hours focusing on that. "Honey, where are you? I'm home, just like I said. I even cleaned up before coming home for you," she called out as she searched for me. "Oh, there you are," she said, opening my office door. "I'm back, and now everything can go back to normal," she added, coming over to my desk with her arms out for a hug and kiss. I pushed her away. "Keep your filthy lips away from me. Who knows what they've touched or what's been in your mouth?" Her eyes widened in shock. I had never spoken to her like this before. Before she could respond, I continued. "You need to get a full STD test and show me a notarized clean report before you touch me again. As for lovemaking, I wouldn't touch you with a 10-foot pole, even with a dozen contraceptives on it." Her shock turned to anger. "I see you're still dealing with your bruised ego. I'm going to our room to nap. I had a long night and need rest. Hopefully, you'll calm down, and we can talk later. I expect an apology for your rudeness." She stormed out. I smiled, anticipating her quick return. "What the hell did you do?" she screamed, storming back. "Where are your clothes? Your toiletries? What do you think you're doing?" "What do you mean?" I asked calmly. "Your closet is empty. Your drawers are empty. What do you mean everything is where it's supposed to be?" "My clothes are in my closet. My toiletries in my bathroom." "They are not. I just checked." "You're mistaken. You think of your bedroom as ours. My stuff is in my new bedroom." "In my bedroom, you mean?" "Yes. I moved out of your bedroom. I'll stay in my new room until I find an apartment." Her eyes narrowed in irritation. "We'll discuss this later. I'll give you a week to get over your fit. Then I expect you to move everything back and we'll go back to normal." Not until I have that notarized report, I replied, turning back to my computer. I stayed in my office most of the day. The kids came home early in the afternoon. I wondered how long it would take them to notice the problem. I found some promising apartments and scheduled viewings for Tuesday. I printed our financial statements for my lawyer appointment on Monday. I knew I'd get screwed in the divorce, but I wanted to be prepared. "Daddy, dinner is ready," Carly said, poking her head in the door. "Okay, sweetie." Kayla was smiling brightly when I entered the kitchen, clearly trying to eliminate me with kindness. She had dressed up, done her hair and makeup, and made my favorite meal. As I entered, she handed me a glass of wine and leaned in for a kiss. I leaned away, took the glass, walked to the sink, poured it out, and set the glass on the counter. I then poured myself a tumbler of Jim Beam. The kids at the table definitely noticed. I sat down at the table and chatted with the kids, ignoring my wife. Dinner was strained. I tried to keep the conversation going with the kids, but it was clear there were serious problems. I didn't put anything on my plate or eat, despite the dishes being my favorites. I just sipped my drink and talked to the kids. "Dad, aren't you going to eat?" Josh asked. "Nope, not hungry," I replied. After the most awkward dinner ever, I refilled my drink and went back to my office without helping to clear the table. Half an hour later, I shut down the computer, grabbed my truck keys, and left for a quiet restaurant. I had dinner, then went to a bar for a couple of drinks. It was late when I got home. Seeing Kayla's light on, I made sure to close my door loudly. I locked it and slid a chair under the knob. She tried the door and knocked, but I ignored her. I was up early the next morning and decided it would be a football day. There were 3 games, and I planned to watch them all. Ignoring weekend chores, I had almost finished a pot of coffee and started making omelets. I finished mine when Carly walked in. "Hey, sweetie, want an omelet?" I asked. "Sure, Dad, thanks," Carly said. She got her juice and sat at the table as I cooked her food. A few minutes later, Josh came in. "I'll make yours next," I told him. As Carly ate, I heard Kayla in the hallway, so I poured the last cup of coffee for myself and turned off the pot. She came in, got a cup, and glared at the empty pot. "You couldn't leave a cup for me?" she asked. "The pot's right there. You know how to make it?" I replied. "Whatever. So you're making omelets?" she asked. "Made them. Just finished. Feel free to make yourself one," I said, slipping Josh's omelet onto his plate. I had used the last of the ingredients and put everything away. Having taken care of the kids, I left the kitchen. Just before noon, I was in the living room watching the game. Kayla came in with a plate and a bottle of beer. "I brought you lunch and a beer so you wouldn't miss the game," she said cheerfully. Without a glance, I swept both off the table with my foot. Shocked, she stood there as I went to the kitchen and got myself a beer. I didn't clean up the mess. She brought it, she could clean it. I didn't care if it stained the carpet. I wouldn't be living there much longer. "We need to discuss this," Kayla began. "Shut up. The game's on," I replied. "For God's sake, you need to fix your attitude. The kids have noticed," she said. "They'll notice when I move out anyway," I said. "You're not moving out, and there will be no divorce," she insisted as she stormed away. Later in the afternoon, Carly and Josh approached me during halftime. "Dad, what's going on with you and Mom?" Carly asked. "You may as well know. Your mother and I are getting a divorce. This has nothing to do with you. We both love you. This is between us," I explained. "But why?" Josh asked. "Because your mother did something I can't accept, even after I told her my feelings. She wasn't remorseful," I said. "You mean her date on Friday night?" Carly asked. "You know about that?" I was surprised. "Yeah, Mom told us you weren't happy about it," Carly said. "So you know she cheated on me," I stated. "No, she didn't. She told you beforehand, so it wasn't cheating. She didn't sneak around. It was only one night, out of the 20 years you've been together. She said if you really loved her, you'd let her have that one night and move on," Carly explained. I was shocked and hurt that my daughter wasn't even trying to understand my side. She had taken her mother's side completely. "Really? If she truly loved me, she wouldn't even consider having lovemaking with someone else," I said. "Dad, it was just one time. She promised it would never happen again," Carly insisted. "Let's talk about promises. Over 17 years ago, she made a vow before God, our families, and friends to forsake all others until end of life. How can I trust any private promise now?" I asked. "But you also vowed to stick with her in good and bad times," Josh pointed out. "True, but her breaking her vow releases me from mine," I replied. "Why break up the family over one night?" Carly asked. "Why am I blamed for her actions? She broke the vows, not me," I said. "Mom wants to move on and put this behind us. You're the one making a big deal and breaking up the family, Carly insisted. It didn't get better after that. They weren't listening. Kayla had convinced them that Mommy needed this, and Daddy's ego was causing all the problems. They thought I was overreacting. Eventually, they stormed out when it was clear I wouldn't agree. I watched the rest of the game in peace. Later, I smelled dinner being prepared, but ignored it. When Josh told me dinner was ready, I grabbed my truck keys. "Where are you going? Dinner is ready," Josh asked. "I'm going to the sports bar to watch the game. I'll eat there," I replied. "But Mom fixed." "I'll be back after the game," I said, cutting him off. I hung out at the bar, enjoying a burger and beer. I only had 1 beer per quarter, so I was fine to drive. By the time I got home, everyone was in bed. The plate and bottle from earlier had been cleaned up, which made me smile. Monday morning, I left early. I called my broker first and had him split our investments into a new account in my name. Then I contacted HR to remove Kayla from my retirement account and added Carly and Josh as heirs. I also changed my direct deposit to my new bank account. Finally, I told my boss about the divorce and needing time off for meetings and court dates. He was supportive. My lawyer confirmed my fears. I was likely to get screwed in the divorce. Custody would depend on where the kids wanted to live, and given our recent conversation, I wasn't hopeful. The lawyer began the paperwork, and I asked him to have Kayla served at work on Monday. After work, I went to the sports bar for Monday Night Football, ignoring Kayla's texts and calls. I let Carly know where I was, but her response wasn't pleasant. When I got home, they all gave me the evil eye. I went straight to my office, then later to bed after everyone was asleep. Tuesday morning, I left early again. Work was fine, and I took the afternoon off to look at apartments. I chose a nice 2-bedroom unit and put down a deposit, planning to move in on Saturday. I bought a couch, table, and chairs from a secondhand store to be delivered that afternoon. I decided to take my bed and everything from my home office. They were eating dinner when I got home. Noticing they didn't set a plate for me, I snickered. I wasn't going to eat it anyway. I made a huge sandwich, grabbed chips and a beer, and went to my office. "Dad, why are you being such an a-hole?" Carly asked, coming into my office. "Because your mother cheated on me, disrespected me, and threw it in my face. I clearly told her what would happen if she went through with it, and she did anyway." "You can't be breaking up the family over that. It was just lovemaking." "Carly, someday you'll be married. How would you feel if your husband told you he had a date with a younger, prettier woman and planned to spend the night with her?" "I wouldn't like it. But if he promised it was just one time, I'd try to get past it. Besides, if he told me it wouldn't be cheating." "Right. Imagine saying your vows and telling your groom you plan to screw another man. Think about the devastation in his eyes." I turned back to my work. Wednesday evening, both sets of parents were at the house when I got home. I actually got along well with my in-laws. Her dad was a gearhead like me. My parents were loving and supportive, and we got along great. I saw the ambush. I understood why her parents were there, but I was confused about my parents being there too. "Tom," Charles began, "we're disappointed in Kayla, but you're overreacting. She made one mistake in 20 years. You don't need to tear the family apart for one small mistake." "Seriously?" "It wasn't a small mistake. It was planned. She ambushed me an hour before leaving, giving me no chance to fight it. It was a deliberate plan to cheat." "Son," Mom said, "she didn't cheat. She told you first." "What?" "She told me, didn't ask. Even when I objected, she didn't care. I told her this would happen if she went through with it." "Tom," Dad added, "we understand your pain, but think about the family. Kayla still loves you. With counseling, you can get past this. Don't tear your family apart. We raised you to be a good man. Think about your mother and me. We will do whatever necessary to keep our relationship with our grandchildren." I was stunned. My parents were actually siding with her, telling me to overlook her cheating. I couldn't take it anymore and went to my bedroom, shutting the door in her face. 10 minutes later, I changed into jeans, a casual shirt, and boots. I walked through the living room without saying a word, ignoring their attempts to talk to me. I got in my truck and went to the sports bar for dinner and beers. The house was quiet and dark when I returned 4 hours later. Thursday and Friday were the same. I ignored Kayla, and the kids stayed mad at me. I was surprised Kayla hadn't noticed the credit cards not working yet. She'd figure it out during her Saturday shopping. Friday evening, I was in my office when Kayla came in wearing a transparent nightie, stockings, garter belt, and heels. "The kids are out tonight. It's time for you to get over this and come to bed. I want you to make love to me all night. I need you to take me back," she demanded, her voice filled with a mix of desperation and desire. No thanks, I haven't seen a clinic report proving you're disease-free, I replied coldly, not even looking up from my desk. Stop being ridiculous. I need you back in my bed. Now come on. I'm aroused and need lovemaking, she insisted, her tone becoming more insistent and frustrated. Not interested, I said flatly, turning another page in my book. If you don't, I'll call Clarence again, she threatened, her voice dripping with anger. So much for it being a one-time thing, I shot back, my voice laced with sarcasm. Damn it, it was. But if you keep rejecting me, you're pushing me back to someone else, she snapped, her frustration boiling over. Have fun. Let me know if you're bringing him here so I can leave, I responded, not bothering to hide my disdain. She stormed out, and half an hour later, I heard her leave, tires screeching. With the house empty, I packed up my things, took apart the bed, and loaded my truck with my clothes. I slept on the sofa in my office. The next morning, I got the apartment keys and moved everything with help from friendly neighbors. No one was home when I returned, so I had a neighbor's son help me load my desk and office furniture. I took the recliner, too. Later that evening, my daughter called. Daddy, where are you? She asked, her voice filled with confusion and worry. I'm at home, sweetheart, I answered, trying to keep my tone calm and reassuring. No, you aren't. Your office is cleaned out, the spare bedroom is empty, and your recliner is gone. Plus, your truck is missing, she listed, her voice rising with each observation. You're right. I moved into an apartment. After the divorce, maybe I'll get another house, I explained, trying to keep the conversation as matter-of-fact as possible. God, Dad, I can't believe you're being such an a-hole about this. I thought you loved us, she exclaimed, her voice breaking with emotion. I do love you, sweetie. Always will, I assured her, feeling a pang of guilt. Just not enough to stay, she accused, her voice filled with hurt. I'm not abandoning you. You can see me anytime. I'll still take care of you and your brother, I promised, trying to make her understand. You left us and are breaking up the family, she said, her voice shaking with anger. Your mother broke up the family. I told her this would happen if she went on that date. She did it anyway, I reminded her, my own frustration creeping into my voice. She thought you loved her enough to get past it, she said, her tone softening slightly. And I thought she loved me enough not to do it, I countered, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Fine, whatever. She hung up, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The divorce was a nightmare. She fought it, wanted counseling, and wanted me to pay. I refused. I argued she should pay for it. I won that argument. The counselor didn't like me because I told him I was ordered to attend but didn't have to participate. After 12 sessions, the counselor gave up. She fought over everything, even things she despised like the poster in the garage and the Bud Light lamp. It was all to make the divorce harder for me and to interfere with my time with the kids. The judge granted the divorce. I had to pay half the mortgage and she kept the house. I paid $2,000 a month in child support and $1,000 a month in spousal maintenance for 5 years, which would end if she remarried. She moved Clarence in before the divorce was final. Half my paycheck went to her. I cashed in some investments and bought a fixer-upper house. I moved in with my tools and started repairs in the evenings and weekends. Visitation was a disaster. Kayla made it difficult, and the kids were busy or hostile. Eventually, they told me they didn't want to see me anymore. Forcing them would have caused more resentment. I sent gifts, cards, and letters for birthdays and Christmas, but they were returned unopened. My checks were cashed, but I never heard a word. I informed them about their college funds, and they responded with, "No thanks." Kayla poisoned my kids against me. I focused on work and my house, saving money by not going out. One day, I called my mom. "Hey, Mom, how are you?" "Doing well. How are you?" she replied cheerfully. "I haven't heard about Thanksgiving. Are you hosting it?" After a pause, she said, "Yes, but Kayla, her parents, and the kids are coming. She's bringing her new man. We thought it would be too awkward for you to be there." "Seriously, Mom? You're choosing my ex-wife and her boyfriend over me. We want to keep our relationship with the grandkids. This is your fault. You should have kept your family together. How about Christmas Eve? We'll be at Kayla's on Christmas Day." "Forget it. You don't have a son anymore," I said, ending the call. I spent Christmas Eve watching Die Hard, ignoring calls and texts from my mom. The packages I sent to my kids had been returned. 5 years later, I got a wedding announcement. Kayla married Clarence the weekend after my last maintenance payment. With Josh turning 18 a year earlier, my child support ended too. I celebrated by getting drunk. I had worked hard and loved them, only to be rejected. Now free of my obligations, I decided to move on and forget about them as much as possible. One thing bugged me. I still had to pay half the mortgage. That ended when Josh graduated, but my name was still on the deed. Kayla thought the house was hers, but the divorce agreement only let her live there until the kids finished high school. I was entitled to half the assets, and the house was a big one. I contacted my lawyer. When we divorced, the house was worth $300,000 with $200,000 in equity. Now, it was worth about $500,000 with $450,000 in equity. We only had $50,000 left on the mortgage. I wanted the money, obviously, and it would piss Kayla off. She loved that house and would hate giving me anything. It would also pay me back for all the maintenance and mortgage payments. A week later, Kayla called.
Tom, what's going on? Just working and fixing up my house.
Surprised to hear from you. You a-hole. Why did a realtor come to my house for a listing contract? Since both our names are on the title, she needs your signature for the sale.
I'm not selling. I love this house. Then when can I expect my check for half the equity?
I got the house in the divorce. No, you gotta live there until Josh graduated. Now we either sell it and split the proceeds, or you buy out my half. I'm not giving you $100,000 for a house that's rightfully mine. Good thing I'm not asking for $100,000. The equity is $450,000 now. My half is $225,000. With the expensive furniture, let's round it to $250,000.
You're insane. I'm not giving you a dime,
she screamed and hung up. I laughed. A couple of months later, the judge ruled in my favor. She had to pay court fees and my lawyer. The house appraised for more than I estimated, and I ended up with $275,000. They bought me out with mostly Clarence's money, which would come back to bite him later. I fixed up my house nicely, including a shop. I bought a 1972 Chevy pickup in bad shape, interested only in the chassis. I stripped, cleaned, and repainted it. The rear differential was good, but I rebuilt it. The transmission was a Borg-Warner T10 manual 4-speed. For fun, I went all out on the engine, a 427 big block. I found one online, had it shipped, and tore it apart. After machine work, I installed a new forged crankshaft, 10, 1 pistons, a heavy cam, and ported and polished heads with double springs. I added a blower, chrome valve covers, polished aluminum, and steel-braided hoses. The first drive was wild. I punched it on the freeway, and the back tires broke loose instantly. I barely managed to keep it straight. Lesson learned. Press the accelerator slowly. I drove more carefully after that. A few weeks later, I saw an ad for a public car show. Thinking it would be fun, I entered and paid the fee. On the day of the show, I drove my 72 Chevy to the park, checked in, and set up my spot next to a 1968 GTO. I noticed 2 attractive redheads, one about my age and the other a teenager, setting up behind the GTO. No guy was with them, and the older one had no ring on her left hand. "Good morning. I like your GTO," I said.
"Thanks. I like your truck too," the older one replied. "This is my first show as a participant. I'm Tom." "I'm Marie, and this is my daughter Jenny. We've done this a few times." I invited them to join me in the shade. We hung out most of the day, chatting with other car enthusiasts. Though I didn't win any awards, I had a great time. Marie shared that she divorced her husband for cheating. She got the GTO in the divorce, using it as leverage to ensure he kept paying child support and maintenance. Jenny was friendly too, expressing anger at her dad for cheating. When the show ended, I invited them to dinner at Red Lobster, and they accepted. Over dinner, I shared my story. They were surprised my kids blamed me for the divorce after my ex cheated. "I'm so sorry, Tom. You seem like a nice guy and didn't deserve that," Marie said. We exchanged numbers and agreed to meet again. Jenny gave me a big smile, a wink, and a thumbs up, signaling her approval. Marie and I went out the next weekend for dinner and dancing. She gave me a kiss on the cheek, and I saw Jenny smiling and giving me another thumbs up. After a few more dates, I invited them over and cooked lasagna. They liked it and enjoyed my house, though Marie noted it needed a woman's touch. The next weekend, they invited me to their apartment. Marie's cooking was amazing, much better than mine. I couldn't stop eating and apologized for making a pig of myself, but they laughed, saying it was the best compliment for someone who loves to cook. 2 weekends later, Marie and I went out for dinner and dancing. During a slow song, she whispered, "Take me home." Surprised, I pulled back, but she giggled and clarified, "Take me to your home." "Oh, well then."
Thankfully, I had my regular truck, not the 72. We ended up doing it 3 times before falling asleep. I cooked her breakfast and drove her home. A few months later, I proposed, and she said yes. We had a simple ceremony in front of a judge, and they moved into my house. Jenny even started calling me Daddy. Life was great. Yes, we had disagreements, and Jenny and I had our differences. She was still a teenager, and I was an authority figure. But she respected me, and her mom loved me as much as I loved her. About a year later, I got a surprise call from an unknown number. "Hello," I answered. "Dad," an excited woman's voice said. "Carly." "Yes, Daddy, it's me. I have great news." "Really, it's good to hear from you. I'm getting married." "That's great, sweetie. I'm so happy for you. I want you at my wedding." "Oh no, Clarence is paying for the wedding, and he will walk me down the aisle. You wouldn't sit in the front pew, but I really want you there." "Clarence? The man your mother cheated with? She married him? Look, Dad, I'm trying to reconnect and want you at my wedding. It's your fault they got together after you left." "You still think your mother did nothing wrong. I can't support this marriage. You'll likely cheat just like your mom. Plus, you took the last honor of a father away from me. You've become a shallow, self-centered witch. Fine, don't expect to see your grandchildren. If you raise them like you, I don't want to—" "Mom's right, you are an a-hole. That was the last I heard from my daughter. She sent texts and voicemails, but I deleted them. Her olive branch was an insult. She made her choice 10 years ago. Any chance of a relationship with her or Josh was gone. It hurt, but they blame me for their mother's actions." I set my phone down and went to work on my 1963 Chevy pickup. This one would be less radical than the 72, with a slightly beefier 350 engine. I didn't notice Jenny pick up my phone or realize she was home.
I was furious with my dad. I reached out and he talked to me like that. It was his fault our family was torn apart. I invited him to my wedding and he threw it back in my face. I wanted him to take responsibility for what he did to our family. My phone rang with an unknown number. "Hello, is this Carly Williams?" a voice asked. "Yes, can I help you?" I replied. "Yes, you can stop calling my daddy and being a witch. He is the best man I know and doesn't deserve a brat like you reminding him of your pathetic family. You and your family are a waste of air." "Who the hell are you?" I demanded. "My name is Jenny Williams. I'm your sister. My mom married your dad and he adopted me. I love him and would never disrespect him. You are an insult to daughters everywhere. I know what happened. Your mom disrespected her husband by going on a date and sleeping with another man. And you seem okay with that. My bio dad cheated on my mom and she kicked him out without hesitation. If my mom ever cheated, I would help my dad throw her out. He is the most decent, caring person I know. I'm grateful your mom was stupid enough to let him go. You can tell your grandparents they have another granddaughter, but I don't want a relationship with people who reject their son for a cheating mom. When you say your vows, think about your husband cheating on you. Call me when it happens so I can laugh. Have a crappy life, sis." She hung up. I stared at the phone in shock. I couldn't believe Dad got married and didn't invite us. I now had a younger sister who sounded like me. Before Mom convinced Josh and me that Dad was breaking up the family over a minor issue, I thought he must have had a good reason. I even considered living with him. But Mom explained she just needed this one thing to rejuvenate herself, and Dad was the one being stubborn and leaving. Jenny was so rude and didn't care about our side. She called me names without knowing me. Of course, Clarence would walk me down the aisle. He had been there for me. He was paying almost $20,000 for the wedding. I doubted Dad could contribute much. I was still upset when Mom and both grandmas came in from shopping. Mom noticed my mood. "Honey, what's wrong?" she asked. I told Dad about the wedding and invited him. I hoped it could help rebuild our relationship. "That's wonderful," Grandma Williams said. "Will he be there? We haven't heard from him since Thanksgiving a few years ago." I sighed. "No, he got mad when I told him Clarence would walk me down the aisle and that it would be too awkward for him to sit with Mom and Clarence." "Oh, that's too bad. I thought he would have gotten over his stubbornness by now. That's not all. I found out I have a stepsister." "What?" they exclaimed. "A girl named Jenny Williams called after Dad hung up. Apparently Dad married her mom and adopted her. She was very rude and said the nicest thing she wanted to thank my mom for being stupid, or she wouldn't have such a great dad. I recounted both calls. They were shocked by the vehemence from Dad and Jenny. Tom got married and we weren't invited, Grandma Williams whispered. The day of my wedding finally arrived. I had a brief moment of sadness that my dad wouldn't be there, but I shrugged it off. I had reached out and he had rejected me. This was a happy day and I was marrying the man I loved. Clarence beamed as he took my arm and we walked up the aisle. I was overjoyed seeing all my friends and family. Josh was one of Bobby's groomsmen. Tears of joy filled my eyes as I saw Bobby smiling at me. Clarence lifted my veil, kissed my cheek and said, "Congratulations, baby." He handed me to Bobby and the ceremony began. When the minister asked, "Who gives this bride away?" and Clarence said, "Her mother and I do," something felt off, but I let it go. As I gazed into Bobby's eyes, repeating my vows, I couldn't say, "Forsake all others." Images flashed through my mind of Bobby with another woman and him looking devastated as I confessed to cheating. "I understand now," I blurted out, feeling a sudden clarity wash over me. Bobby looked concerned. "What do you understand?" he asked, his brow furrowed with worry. "Absolutely everything," I replied with conviction. Then I got serious. "Bobby, do you really love me?" I asked, searching his eyes for the truth. "Of course I love you. Why are you asking?" he responded, his voice filled with confusion and concern. "Because I can't marry you today. We will get married, but not today. I need to make things right," I explained, my voice trembling slightly. "Baby, what's wrong?" he asked, his concern deepening. "I love you, and I will marry you, but we need to fix things first. We will reschedule the wedding," I said firmly, trying to reassure him. "You're not leaving me at the altar, are you?" he asked, his voice tinged with fear. "Not a chance. You're coming with me," I replied, grabbing his hand. I turned to the guests. "I'm sorry, but I can't go through with this today. We will reschedule. In the meantime, please enjoy the reception. It's all paid for. Clarence is footing the bill," I announced, my voice carrying through the crowd. I grabbed Bobby's hand and headed back down the aisle. My mother and Clarence blocked my exit, Clarence furious about the money spent. Mom asked, "Carly, what are you doing?" her voice sharp with confusion. "I'm fixing a mistake I made years ago," I answered, determined. "What mistake?" "The mistake of blaming my dad for the divorce when it was your fault for cheating," I said, my voice steady. "Carly, I am your mother. I'm not a strumpet and you will respect me," she said, her tone defensive and stern. "Really, Mother? Once a cheater, always a cheater," I retorted, my anger rising. "Carly, how dare you?" she exclaimed, shocked by my accusation. "How dare me? I'm ashamed I ever looked up to you. It wasn't until I was saying my vows to Bobby that I realized how horrible you are. Once a cheater, always a cheater." Looking into his eyes, I understood how terrible it would be if he cheated on me and how badly I would hurt him if I cheated. Dad was a good role model. "You weren't," I said, my voice breaking with emotion. "What do you mean?" Mom asked, fear in her eyes, her voice barely a whisper. "I mean, you destroyed our family with your actions. You hurt Dad, and you hurt us. And now, I see how wrong I was to side with you," I explained, my voice filled with the pain of realization. "I never meant to hurt anyone," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "But you did, and now I need to make things right," I said, my voice strong and resolute. "Seriously, Mom, do you think I don't know about your workouts with Jim Davis at his apartment? Or how Carlos, the pool boy, takes extra time because you're sleeping with him? Or the landscape crew you sleep with after yard work? I have videos of that. And let's not forget the backroom heads you give Mario, your hairstylist. At least Clarence doesn't have to worry about you cheating with your boss. Oh, and Alan Morris, our neighbor, who visits when his wife has girls' night out." Her eyes darted to Clarence, who looked utterly shocked. I turned to him. "Clarence, I vow with the same commitment my mom had to her vows that I'll pay you back for this wedding. Don't expect a dime." I pulled Bobby down the aisle. stopping to talk to the videographer who caught everything on camera. He gave me a copy, and I signed a release form for YouTube. Bobby and I dashed to the parking lot, got in his car, and roared out. "Where are we going?" he asked. "West on 156. I'll put the address in Waze," I replied, finding the address quickly. It was about 2 hours away, and I hoped Dad was home. We didn't stop to change. I was on a mission and didn't want to waste time.
It's not every day you open your door to see a bride and groom standing on your porch. I'm not a minister, and I don't live at a church, so it was quite a surprise. Even more surprising was recognizing one of them as my daughter Carly, who had made it clear she never wanted to see me again. I knew today was her wedding day, so she should have been at the church, the reception, or on her honeymoon. "Daddy, can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked softly. Still stunned, I let them in and gestured to the living room where Marie and Jenny were sitting, both looking shocked. "Carly, this is my wife, Marie, and our daughter, Jenny. Jenny, Marie, this is Carly. I don't know who the man with her is." "Daddy, this is Bobby Jensen, my fiancé," Carly introduced. "Didn't you get married a few hours ago?" I asked, confused. "I need to talk to you about that. I couldn't go through with it today. I can't get married unless my daddy walks me down the aisle." "Daddy, I finally understand. You were right. Mom threw everything away, not you. I'm sorry for blaming you. You didn't deserve any of that. I hope you can forgive me and let me back into your life. I really want to marry Bobby, but I can't unless you agree to walk me down the aisle." This was unexpected. I was happy she wanted me back in her life, but curious about the scene. "Carly, did something happen at the wedding? You're still in your wedding dress, and Bobby's in his tux." "We were halfway through the ceremony when I had an epiphany," she said, handing me a CD. "You should watch this." While Bobby and I changed into regular clothes, Marie showed Carly to a bedroom to change. I set up the video player in the living room. When Carly and Bobby were ready, we watched the video. It started as a typical wedding, but Carly stumbled during her vows. "She did it. I can't believe it," Jenny whispered. Carly stopped the wedding and confronted her mom, revealing more of her infidelity. I was shocked. Carly explained, "I couldn't go through with it. I realized how hurt Bobby would be if I did to him what Mom did to you. I finally understood what forsaking all others meant. Mom dishonored you, and I was dishonoring you by getting married without you there. The vows would be meaningless without the most honorable person I know. When I marry Bobby, it needs to be you who walks me down the aisle, not Mom and Clarence." Carly paused and smiled at Jenny. "Besides, I need my little sister as a bridesmaid. Your words woke me up. How can I get married without you standing up there for me?" This was a lot to process. We talked for hours. I didn't know Jenny had gotten Carly's number from my phone and called her. When it got late, I had them stay in the guest bedroom. Carly ignored calls from Clarence and Kayla, but took calls from friends. Some guests took her up on the offer to party on Clarence's dime. He tried to cancel, but was too late, so he ended up drinking in a corner. Josh sent Carly a video of their mom trying to talk to Clarence, which ended in him yelling, "Cheating strumpet." That relationship seemed over. Josh also managed to cancel the flight and resort reservations, but was stuck with a 20% cancellation fee. Since Carly and Bobby had already taken time off for their honeymoon, they stayed with us for the week. I reconnected with Carly and got to know Bobby, who turned out to be a great guy with strong morals. It was strained at first because of the lies my ex and kids had told him, but he warmed up to me after learning the truth and seeing my workshop. We set a new wedding date for the same venue a year later. This time, I would walk Carly down the aisle. Marie and Jenny were involved in the planning. Carly and Bobby updated everyone in the wedding party, except Kayla and Clarence. Over the next few months, Carly and I rebuilt our relationship, and I got to know Bobby better. We attended car shows together, entering Marie's GTO, my 72 truck, Bobby's Challenger, and Jenny's 1974 Firebird. Carly and Bobby visited us often, and Josh even showed up a few times, though it was harder with him because he was closer to his mother. Meanwhile, things didn't go well for Kayla and Clarence. Clarence moved out and filed for divorce under irreconcilable differences to avoid a fight and the harsh penalties of the prenup. The prenup protected his pre-marriage assets, so Kayla only got to keep the house and about $50,000. Clarence couldn't prove he used his money to buy my share of the house, and his name wasn't on the title. He ended up paying off a business loan with nothing to show for it and couldn't refile under infidelity in time. Word of Kayla's affairs spread, and her standing in the community took a significant hit. Her friends started avoiding her, and invitations to parties, charity events, and other gatherings dried up. Even worse for her, since she didn't work and relied on Clarence's money, her financial situation suffered greatly. Clarence learned an expensive lesson. He lost a couple of $100,000 buying out my half of the house, another $28,000 for the failed wedding, and had to pay Kayla $50,000 in the divorce. Then, there was the humiliation. Kayla was angry that her affairs were publicly revealed, and that Clarence was divorcing her in the manner he did. She started telling her remaining friends that she cheated on him because he had such a small instrument and didn't even know how to use it properly. That kind of gossip spreads quickly. Soon, every woman he tried to pick up in a bar would just laugh at him. He became somewhat of a recluse, only going to work and then straight home. His social life disappeared. "Ready, Daddy?" my oldest daughter asked. No father is ever really ready to let go of their daughters, but I'm honored to do this for you, I replied. The doors opened, the music began, and filled the church. I stepped forward with my left foot, proudly walking my daughter down the aisle. I glanced around, and my smile grew bigger. My ex-wife was sitting in the fourth row. My wife Marie was in her place of honor in the first row. I would join her after I completed my last important duty for my daughter. "Who gives this woman to be wed?" the minister asked. "As her father, I give her to be wed," I spoke loudly. "Love you, Munchkin," I whispered to her as I kissed her on the cheek before handing her off to Bobby. Yes, I neglected to mention my wife. No, it was not all my idea. Carly asked me to do it that way. I then turned and sat next to my wife. "To have and to hold in sickness and in health, through good times and bad, forsaking all others." Carly practically shouted the last part. Then with a brilliant smile, she finished her vows. It was a beautiful ceremony. Cheers erupted as they kissed. At the end, I looked down from the head table. Marie was right beside me. I saw Kayla sitting at a table off to the side. She didn't look happy. Every time she looked up and saw Marie sitting in her spot, she scowled. I noticed she was taking advantage of the open bar. Clarence had not been invited. I don't know if he would have come even if he had been. My last great accomplishment for my daughter was complete. I walked her down the aisle, gave her away, gave a beautiful toast to the newlyweds, danced with my daughter in the father-daughter dance, then danced with my wife while my daughter and her husband and his parents danced to the second song. My obligations were complete. I was sitting at the table beside my wife. My younger daughter was out dancing with one of the boys, vying for her attention. "Pardon me, Marie, is it? May I borrow your husband for this dance?" I heard a familiar voice behind me. Request from my wife Marie, and I turned around to face my ex-wife. Marie eyed her for a moment before responding. "Just make sure you return him to where you found him." She looked at me. "I trust you. It's her I don't trust to not try anything stupid." I led Kayla onto the floor. They started a slow song. It wouldn't have surprised me if she had requested it just for this purpose. I was careful to keep some distance and not pull her in tight. We danced for a bit before she started talking. "You were supposed to give me that one night. We should have moved past that and gone on like normal. This was supposed to be the two of us together today, and you were not supposed to have gone out that night. You should have known me better than to think that I would have been okay with you cheating on me, no matter how many times you did it." "I didn't cheat. I told you about it before I did it. I didn't sneak around behind your back. Whether you told me or not is irrelevant. The fact that you had lovemaking with someone else is cheating. Besides, I never gave you permission. I told you not to do it, but you did it anyway. I never wanted this. I just wanted that one night. Then we could have been together forever. You know you are the only man I have ever loved. I never had any love for him. Besides, the lovemaking wasn't even that good. He was selfish, and he wasn't even as big as you are." "Then why did you marry him?" "Because you divorced me. Sure, I didn't love him, but I liked him. After you left, I didn't want to be alone. I thought that I might grow to love him, but I could never get over you. I did all that to you because I was pissed that you left me. I still loved you, but you wouldn't even talk to me. After that one night, I realized that you were everything I would ever need, and I would never go out with another man again." "So why did you cheat on him then?" "Because he was terrible in bed. I thought I could train him, but he refused to take any advice. He would just stick it in, pump for a few minutes, finish, then roll over and fall asleep. When I couldn't take it anymore, I found a couple of other guys who could actually satisfy me. I had no idea Carly knew anything about it. Even if I did, I never would have guessed she would betray me like that. I'm sorry for you. We had a great marriage, but you threw it away for one night of mediocre lovemaking." I don't suppose there's any chance. I couldn't help laughing. Not just no, but hell no. First off, even if I wasn't married now, what you did in turning my kids against me eliminated any chance of us ever getting back together. Now I'm married again to a woman I love, and I have another daughter that I love as well. The best I can offer is civility when we are at the same place and at events with our children and grandchildren. Thankfully, the song ended shortly after. I didn't talk to her again that night. She couldn't afford the mortgage payments on the house, so she ended up selling it and moving into a small apartment. She got enough money out of the house to live on if she was careful. She went out with her friends occasionally, but as far as I know, she never had another relationship. Clarence ended up living alone as well. Carly and Bobby had a long, loving marriage. They had 3 kids, 2 boys and 1 girl. Josh eventually married a sweet girl too. They had 2 daughters. As far as I know, neither one cheated on the other. Some believe I should have sought revenge on Kayla and Clarence. The reality is there was nothing I could do to hurt them without either going to jail or having it backfire on me. I decided to move ahead and live my life as best as I could. There's a saying, the best revenge is a life well lived. I did that and let karma handle the rest. Karma is a cow, and her dance name is vengeance. Clarence and Kayla were not burned, but they did not escape unscathed. No, I didn't have anything to do with it, but I still feel good about myself. I have my wife, my daughter, and my 2 other children back in my life. I am surrounded by people who love me. I have a good life. Ready, Daddy? My daughter asked. No father is ever really ready to let go of their daughters, but I'm honored to do this for you, I replied. The doors opened. The music began and filled the church. I stepped forward with my left foot, proudly walking my daughter down the aisle. My wife was in her place of honor in the first row, smiling broadly. I would join her after I took care of my last important duty for my daughter. Don't worry, Daddy. I'm going through with this. Today I talked to Carly and I'm doing it right the first time, Jenny assured me.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
Hey there, I'm Maria. My coworker Amy tells me for the 100th time today, you're glowing. It's not because of the typical engagement excitement that people expect. No, my smile is for something else. Alex left a sticky note in my lunchbox with a hilariously bad stick figure drawing of us. He labeled his figure still can't draw, and mine is still says yes. That's what I love about us. We never follow the expected path. Take our first date, for example. Instead of the usual dinner and a movie, we ended up helping his elderly neighbor chase down her runaway pet rabbit in the rain. By the time we caught Mr. Whiskers, who, ironically, was not a cat, we were drenched, muddy, and laughing so hard we could barely breathe. The past 3 years with Alex have been full of these wonderfully quirky moments, like the time we tried making homemade pasta and ended up with flour in places I'm still finding, or when he tried to teach me basketball, and I accidentally hit him in the face with the ball, twice. He now wears protective goggles whenever we play, looking like a dorky mad scientist. Our engagement story isn't TikTok famous. There were no flash mobs, elaborate scavenger hunts, or skywriting. Instead, Alex proposed while we were building a blanket fort during a power outage. We'd been telling ghost stories by candlelight when, right in the middle of my overly dramatic ghost impression, he pulled out the ring and said, I want all my power outages to be with you. People keep asking me about wedding plans and color schemes, but I'm too busy enjoying moments like Alex geeking out about space facts while we grocery shop or do laundry. Did you know astronauts can't cry in space because tears don't fall? He'll say, his eyes lighting up like a child sharing a secret. Sometimes, I catch him watching me when he thinks I'm not paying attention, and it makes me smile even more. Like when I'm trying to solve the Sunday crossword puzzle or dancing to 80s music while loading the dishwasher. Alex has this look that makes me feel like the most captivating person in the world, even if I've just spent 10 minutes ranting about how someone ate my clearly labeled yogurt from the office fridge. The ring feels different from what I expected, not in its appearance, which is beautiful, a vintage piece that belonged to his grandmother, but in what it symbolizes. It's not just about the future we're planning. It's about celebrating what we already share. This comfortable, quirky love feels like coming home after a long day and finding your favorite meal waiting, even though you never mentioned you were craving it. Last night, we sat on our tiny balcony, sharing leftover Chinese food straight from the containers. Alex was wearing his "This Is My Fancy Shirt" t-shirt, and we mapped out our future, guided by fortune cookie predictions. According to those cookies, we'll have 3 daughters, live in a house with a purple door, and become surprisingly good at origami. Watching him then, laughing so hard at his own bad jokes that he nearly choked on lo mein, I felt an undeniable certainty. Not the fairy tale kind, but the real kind. The kind that comes from knowing someone's flaws and strange habits and still thinking they're absolutely perfect for you. Now let's check the story from Alex's side. It's been 2 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days, not that I'm counting, since I last saw that name appear on her phone. I still remember sitting in our favorite coffee shop, my hands curled around a cooling cup of coffee, as she looked me in the eye and promised, really promised, that she understood why her friendship with James made me uncomfortable. There was something different about that conversation. Maybe it was the way she reached across the table, took my phone, and showed me as she removed him from her social media. "I choose us," she said. The ring had been burning a hole in my sock drawer for months before that day. I picked it out last summer, but every time I thought about proposing, something would happen. A casual mention of meeting James for coffee, a text notification I'd catch a glimpse of, or those group hangouts where he'd always somehow be present. Each time, the ring stayed hidden, and my doubts grew louder. It's funny how much lighter everything feels now. Last weekend, we were at her cousin's wedding, and for the first time, I wasn't spending the evening wondering if she was secretly messaging him during the quiet moments. Instead, I watched her dance, terribly, with reckless abandon. Because when Beyoncé comes on, she doesn't care who's watching. And all I could think was, this is it. This is our time. The proposal didn't go exactly as I had planned. I had everything arranged, dinner reservations at that fancy restaurant overlooking the city, a violinist on standby, the works. But that morning, seeing her in her old college sweatshirt, struggling to make French toast and getting more batter on herself than in the pan, I couldn't wait. The ring was upstairs, and before I even realized what I was doing, I was running to get it. She said yes before I could even finish asking. We were so caught up calling our families that the French toast ended up burning, but not even the smell of charred breakfast could ruin that moment. We ended up at our local diner for breakfast, still in our pajamas, looking like a mess and grinning like fools. Looking back, I realize how close I came to letting my fears cloud what we have. Those long conversations about boundaries with exes, and the arguments that started with, "he's just a friend," and ended with slammed doors, they feel distant now. Not forgotten, but like obstacles we had to overcome to reach this place. Now, when her phone buzzes, she reads her messages out loud without me needing to ask. Usually about work drama or her mom's latest cooking disaster. There's an ease in how she shares her life with me now. No hidden corners or careful omissions. Just last week, she even turned down an invitation to a mutual friends party because she knew James would be there. She didn't make a big deal out of it, just said, "Not our scene, babe. Let's do movie night instead." Sometimes, I still catch myself waiting for the other shoe to drop. Old habits are hard to break. But then Maria will do something like leave sticky notes with terrible puns in my lunchbox, or send me a random text about how she can't wait to argue with me over wallpaper patterns when we buy our own place, and I remember. This is what trust feels like. This is what we fought for. The ring looks perfect on her finger, catching the light just right. But what's even more perfect is the way she absent-mindedly twists it while reading, just as she used to fidget with her hair. It's become part of her, just like she's become part of me. For the first time in our relationship, I'm not scanning for shadows in the corners. I'm looking forward. Now let's check Maria's side of the story. I've been staring at my phone for 20 minutes, debating whether to respond to James's text congratulating me on the engagement. It shouldn't be this complicated. He's just James, the same James who helped me move into my first apartment, taught me to drive stick shift in his beat-up Volkswagen, and supported me through my dad's passing 3 years ago. We dated for only 2 months in college before realizing we were better as friends. That was 7 years ago, and since then, he's become more like a brother than an ex. We were part of the same pre-med study group, both realizing we hated organic chemistry and switching majors together. James to business and me to marketing. It's funny how some people just stick around through all of life's plot twists. Alex doesn't see it that way. To him, James is an ex-boyfriend, while I see the friend who brought me soup during finals week, helped me build my IKEA furniture, even if he did put my bookshelf together backwards, and introduced me to his girlfriend, Sarah, last year. How threatening can someone be when they're the reason you have an embarrassing nickname from a botched attempt at dyeing your hair purple that turned out green? Maybe I should have set clearer boundaries with Alex from the beginning. But how do you explain a friendship that's survived 3 apartments, 2 career changes, and countless bad dates? James was there through my disastrous relationship with Mike, my quarter-life crisis when I almost moved to Seattle, and that phase where I thought I could become a professional baker. He still teases me about my rock-hard cookies. I understand why Alex feels uneasy. If the roles were reversed, I'd probably feel the same. But cutting James out completely feels like erasing a whole chapter of my life. It's not just losing a friend. It's acting as if those shared memories and inside jokes don't matter. Like the time we got so lost hiking we ended up in the wrong state, or our rainy Sunday tradition of watching terrible sci-fi movies. The engagement ring glimmers as I type and erase yet another reply to his text. I promised Alex I'd keep my distance, and I have. No more casual coffee meetups. No more group game nights where James would always play the banker in Monopoly and cheat, as if it were an inside joke only we shared. I've kept my word, but ghosting someone who has been there for every significant chapter of my adult life feels like I'm erasing a part of myself. Just last week, Sarah posted photos of their long-awaited trip to Japan, the one James had been planning since college. He's finally doing it, ticking off the dreams we once shared during late-night study marathons. I wanted so badly to text him, to tease him about the ridiculous tourist shirt he wore in one photo, exactly the kind we used to joke we'd buy ironically. Instead, I just liked the post and closed Instagram, a quiet act of restraint. Alex has been so happy lately. Seeing him relaxed and confident in us means everything to me. Still, there's this persistent voice in my head asking, shouldn't love be secure enough to survive old friendships? James wasn't just part of my past relationships. He was part of my journey of figuring out who I am, beyond just who I'm with. He knows all my clumsy attempts at adulthood, my awkward stories, my worries about turning into my mother. I read the text again. Congrats, Nance. Alex is a lucky guy. Hope you're happy. Simple, friendly, exactly what you'd expect from an old friend. After another minute, I set my phone down without replying. Sometimes, maintaining peace means letting certain bridges fade into the background, even if those very connections shaped the path that brought you to where you are now. Now let's check the story from Alex's side. It's just a birthday party, Alex. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? I look at Maria across the kitchen island, her hands cradling a coffee mug, one she got from James back in college. Even now, traces of him linger in these subtle ways. The anger building inside me isn't a sudden flame but a cold, deep-seated certainty. Let me be very clear, I say, keeping my voice controlled. Every guy who claims to be just a friend is often waiting for his chance. I've seen it before, countless times. I've watched those so-called friends comfort someone after a breakup, only to make their move weeks later. Maria opens her mouth to object, but I raise my hand to stop her. Do you know why James didn't invite me to his party? Because in his mind, I'm just temporary, the current boyfriend, or rather, fiancé, standing in his way. He's stayed close for 7 years, Maria. 7 years of being your emotional safety net. The ring on her finger catches the light, and a bitter taste rises in my throat. When I proposed, it wasn't just about that moment, or even just about love. I proposed because you finally understood this boundary, and you promised me. You looked me in the eye and said you understood why your friendship with him crossed a line. She sets down her mug so forcefully that coffee splashes over the rim. That's not fair, she says, her voice tight. James has a girlfriend. He's always been supportive of our relationship. A hollow laugh escapes me, without a trace of humor. Of course he has. That's part of the playbook, Maria. Be the supportive friend, the confidant, the guy who just gets you. But think about it. Why does he need to text you at midnight with random thoughts? Why do your catch-ups have to be just the two of you? Why can't his girlfriend or I be there? Silence stretches between us, broken only by the faint sound of a car alarm outside, which quickly fades. I take a deep breath and continue, my voice softer now. I've seen this dynamic too many times. Genuine platonic friendships between men and women are already rare, but between exes, they're almost impossible. One person almost always holds onto feelings, waiting for an opportunity. More often than not, it's the guy, because we're wired that way. We leave the door open, even if it's just a crack. Maria's face flushes with anger. So what? You're saying men and women can't be friends? That's outdated and sexist. No, I reply, holding her gaze. I'm saying that from the beginning, I've been honest about this boundary. I'm saying that I proposed to you after you understood and respected that boundary. And now, you're not asking, but telling me that you're going to his birthday party. A party where there will be drinking, dancing, and reminiscing about old times. I walk to the window, needing some distance. You know what hurts the most? It's not even about James anymore. It's about respect. Respect for my feelings, respect for our relationship, respect for the promises you made when you accepted this ring. You agreed that some things would have to change. Turning back to her, I say, I'm not trying to control you, Maria. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you what I can and cannot accept in our marriage. I can't accept you maintaining an intimate friendship with someone who's seen you naked. The silence that follows is heavy, laden with everything we've built together and everything we stand to lose. When I speak again, my voice is quiet but resolute. So no, it's not just a birthday party. It's a choice. If you go, you're choosing to disregard everything I've said, everything you promised, and everything this ring represents. I start toward our bedroom but pause at the doorway. You know what the saddest part is? James knows exactly what he's doing. He's testing how much influence he still has over you. And right now, you're showing him that it's more than your fiancé does. Now let's check the story from Maria's side. As I settle onto the couch, it feels foreign beneath me, every cushion a reminder that this isn't where I'm meant to be sleeping. My engagement ring feels heavy on my finger as I scroll through the photos from James's party. Each image feels like evidence of my wrongdoing. Me laughing with old friends, blowing out candles on James's cake, group shots where everyone is raising their glasses. I thought coming home late would mean Alex would be asleep and that we could deal with this in the morning. Instead, he was sitting in the dark living room, waiting for me. Had fun? His voice was flat when I walked in. No anger, which somehow made it worse. He didn't even look at my attempted smile or respond when I leaned in to kiss him. Instead, he pointed to the couch and walked to our bedroom. Our bedroom. The door shut behind him, and it might as well have been a wall. Morning light creeps through the blinds, and I hear Alex in the kitchen. My heart leaps. Maybe he's cooled down. Maybe we can talk this out. I practiced my explanation again. It was just a party. Nothing happened. I barely even talked to James. But when I enter the kitchen, Alex's expression stops me cold. He extends his hand, the ring glinting in the light, but he doesn't look up from his coffee. 2 words, he says, and suddenly I can't breathe. Alex, please. It was stupid. I know, but Maria, his voice cracks slightly. I need you to understand something. This isn't about the party. This is about trust, about respect, about choices and consequences. You tried pushing the boundary again. You defied me and broke your promise. I start crying, the kind of ugly sobbing where I can't catch my breath. I'll cut him off completely. I'll block his number. I'll stop. Alex finally looks at me, and I wish he hadn't. His eyes are red-rimmed but dry. You've made those promises before, but last night proved something to me. You'll always choose the possibility of keeping him in your life over the certainty of keeping me in it. That's not true. I shout, but even as the words leave my mouth, I know they're a lie. Every boundary I agreed to, I found a way around. Every promise I made, I've bent. And for what? For someone who, as Alex points out, didn't even have the decency to invite my fiancé to his party. Alex stands, pushing his untouched coffee away. I called Rachel. She'll be here in an hour to help you pack. Pack? The word feels foreign. None of this makes sense. Just 24 hours ago, I was planning a wedding. You have until tomorrow evening to get your things. Anything left, I'll have shipped to your mom's. His voice is gentle, but the finality in it cuts deep. I've already called the wedding venue to cancel. I grab his arm as he passes. 3 years, Alex? Are you really throwing away 3 years? He carefully removes my hand. No, Maria. You threw it away. One decision at a time. One broken promise at a time. Last night was just the final one. The next few hours blur together. Rachel arrives, looking uncomfortable and avoiding my gaze as she helps pack my life into boxes. Alex stays in his home office, the door closed. I keep waiting for him to burst out, to yell, to give me one more chance to explain, but he doesn't. The silence is absolute. It's only when I'm in Rachel's car that my phone buzzes. It's James. Hope you're okay. Alex seems really out of line here. Want to grab coffee and talk about it? I stare at the message, and suddenly Alex's words from all those arguments echo in my head. About guys waiting in the wings. About the impossibility of true platonic friendship with an ex. I turn off my phone and lean my head against the window, watching our apartment building. His apartment building now. Disappear in the side mirror. The ring sits in a small box on what used to be our kitchen counter. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
I think I completely caught her off guard. I'm almost certain she expected me to say, yes, dear, and then follow along with whatever she wanted, just like I always had before. After all, hadn't that always been the pattern? She was used to me acquiescing, doing what she asked without question. I met Nora Bethany during my second year of college. We were both business management majors, enrolled in a production management class, and happened to be assigned to the same project. I was immediately drawn to her. Her looks, her personality, and her sense of humor. I asked her out, and to my delight, she said yes. Our relationship blossomed from there. We were inseparable during our junior year, and by the beginning of senior year, I proposed. She accepted, and we were married just a month after graduation. Soon after, we both found jobs, settling into the typical middle-class lifestyle. Everything seemed perfect, or at least, that's what I thought. Both Nora Bethany and I were thriving in our respective careers when everything began to change. After we found out we were expecting, Nora Bethany made the decision to step away from the workforce and dedicate herself to being a full-time mother. I supported her choice, knowing it would bring fulfillment to her life, while I continued to focus on my career. Over the years, I worked tirelessly, steadily climbing the corporate ladder. By the time I reached the position of regional manager, we were blessed with 3 wonderful children. I considered myself incredibly fortunate. I had a wife who loved me deeply, a woman who spoiled me with affection and care, and 3 beautiful children who were the center of my world. At the same time, my career was flourishing, and I was quickly gaining recognition as a rising star in the company. It wasn't just about the success, it was the fact that I truly loved my job. It gave me a sense of purpose and fulfillment that mirrored the joy I felt at home with my family. Life, in that moment, felt like it was exactly how it was meant to be. It is a fact of corporate life that as you climb the corporate ladder, the workload gets heavier and heavier until you finally reach the point where you can delegate. I hadn't yet reached that point, but I was closing in on it. The heavier workload translated into late nights at the office and a lot of times when I had to bring work home with me. Those times meant a lot of late nights and busy weekends for me, but I didn't care because I had a goal. The vice president of sales and marketing was retiring in a month, and I was one of 3 men who had a shot at getting the position. Once there, my workload would only be a third of what I was doing in trying to get there. More responsibility, a lot of high-level decision-making, but I would be able to delegate the nuts and bolts work to subordinates. But first I had to get there, and that meant hard work, and hard work meant a pissed-off Nora Bethany. Nora Bethany had been planning a weekend getaway for us for almost 2 months. It was to be 4 nights and 5 days at Aspen, and she had already made the hotel reservations, purchased the lift tickets, arranged for her parents to take the kids, and started packing her bags. 2 days before we were to leave, I told her that I had to cancel. We have a project fastly approaching a deadline, and it is in trouble. I'm going to have to ride herd on it until it is done. Damn it, Walter, you can't do this to me again. That damn job had interfered with our last 4 vacations, 6 of our last 7 anniversaries, and caused you to forget every one of my birthdays for the last 10 years. You owe me this weekend, Walter. You owe me and I want it. Be reasonable, Nora Bethany. If I pull this project through on time, I'm almost a shoo-in for Benson's job when he retires. Is that what this is all about? Making points to get Benson's job? You make that sound like a bad thing. It isn't a bad thing. It is a stupid thing. I just now realized I lost all those vacations, anniversaries, and birthdays because I kept my mouth shut. What does that mean? Nothing, Walter. Just go work on your damned project while I finish packing. Finish packing? Yes, Walter. Finish packing. I'm going with or without you, but I am going. You would go without me? Do you think that would be wise? A married woman alone? That would be like wearing a neon sign saying, "Here I am. Show me a good time." I fully intend to have a good time, Walter. I'd rather have it with you, but I'll manage if you don't go. Really, Nora Bethany, I don't. Just go to your reports, Walter, or whatever. I'm going, and that's that. I'm through letting your goddamn job interfere with things. The day we were supposed to leave for Aspen came, and when I got home from work, I found Nora Bethany putting the last of her suitcases in the car. I took one last shot at trying to get her to be reasonable. I'm serious, Nora Bethany. Going to Aspen alone is not a good idea. So come with me, Walter. You know I can't do that. I have to make sure that this project doesn't go belly up. I save the project, and I know I'll get Benson's job, and then things will get a lot easier. There won't be any more screwed-up vacations or forgotten birthdays and anniversaries. I'll be in a decision-making position. Someone else will be doing the donkey work. That's nice, Walter, but I've been looking forward to this weekend for 2 months now, and I'd rather you go with me, but I'm going. I still don't think it is a good idea for you to go alone. I won't be alone, Walter. What does that mean? I'll call you tonight, Walter, after I get checked in at the hotel. Nora, enjoy your project, Walter, and she got in the car and backed down the drive. I stood there watching her go, and I wondered about her "I won't be alone" remark. As she turned the corner at the end of the block, I put it out of my mind and went into the house. I was reviewing some specifications when the phone rang. It was Nora Bethany, and she gave me her room number and the phone number of the hotel. She sounded out of breath, and I asked her why. I just did 25 laps in the indoor pool. I'm curious, Nora Bethany. What did you mean when you said you wouldn't be alone? Did I say that? Yes, you did. I must have meant that I expect to get hit on a lot while I'm here. I'm not a bad-looking broad, in case you have forgotten. I expect that I'll be kept on the dance floor all night. I probably won't even have to buy a drink after my first one. Well, I'm dripping wet and I need to get out of this bathing suit and take a shower. I love you, baby. See you in 5 days. And she hung up. Now, I've never had any reason to doubt Nora Bethany, but to be absolutely honest about it, it was mostly because I didn't pay all that much attention to what she did. Why should I? She kept the house spotless. She spoiled me rotten. She raised 3 great kids, and I knew she loved me as much as I loved her. But 3 things just happened in the space of 6 hours that alone would have meant nothing. But taken together, they were screaming something at me. Just to satisfy myself, I called the number she gave me for the hotel, and when the desk clerk answered, I asked him what were the hours on the indoor pool, and I got the answer that I hoped I wouldn't. The last time I had been in that hotel 4 years previous, they didn't have an indoor pool. According to the desk clerk, they still didn't. Couple that with Nora Bethany's "I won't be alone" remark, and a red flag was being raised. The third thing, and the one I really didn't want to think about, was that I was almost positive that I heard someone else breathing heavily in the background while I was talking to her. All of a sudden, I wasn't as sure of my wife as I had always been. I made myself a drink, sat down on the couch and put my feet up on the hassock, and tried to think of things that might have been an indication that my wife might have strayed on me. I did a lot of deep memory probing and found out that I really didn't know all that much about what went on around our house. I deferred everything to Nora Bethany. She wanted to paint the bathroom a creamy yellow. Yes, dear, whatever you want. Buy a leather sofa for the living room? Of course, dear, whatever you would like. She picked out my shirts, ties, and even my shoes, and I said yes, dear, and kept on doing whatever I was doing. She picked out the house we lived in. She picked our friends. She picked out the places where we went to eat, and she chose the films and TV shows we watched, and I just said yes, dear, and went along with it. Even this weekend that she had planned was all Nora Bethany. She picked the hotel. She decided where we were going to ski, and she even made a list of the runs we would take. She made dinner reservations for each one of the nights we were to stay there. She asked me if the arrangements were all right, and I said, yes, dear, just fine. It hit me that my wife could have been the neighborhood hookup queen, and I wouldn't have had a clue because I never paid enough attention. The next 24 hours were brutal, with all kinds of thoughts messing with my head. Then, at 10 on Friday night, Nora Bethany called and asked how I was doing. Sitting here having bad thoughts. My own fault, of course. If I was there, I wouldn't be here thinking the things I'm thinking, wondering about what I'm wondering about. And what would that be, babe? I wouldn't be sitting here wondering who it is that you were sleeping with while you were up there. There were several moments of silence from her end, and then she said, and just why would you think that? So, I told her about what I'd heard in the background when she called, and then about my call to the hotel. You lied about the pool, heavy breathing in the background, and the comment you let slip about not be alone. 2 and 2 have always equaled 4 to me, Nora Bethany. I can see we will need to have a talk when I get home. I don't see why. Your lack of outrage and lack of indignation over what I have just accused you of say all that needs to be said. Your "I won't be alone" comment before you even left tells me that you knew I probably wouldn't be going along, and you already had made other arrangements. To me, that means that this probably isn't the first time you have cheated on me, and it probably means that this weekend wasn't really meant for you and me anyway. You set up everything, even your lover. More silence from her end, and I said, your lack of response to that is just as telling. Good night. Nora Bethany, and I hung up on her. The phone rang again almost immediately, and it rang several times during the evening, but I ignored it. I was sitting at the kitchen table poring over the list of things I needed to do to keep the project on track when the phone rang. It was Nora Bethany. You hung up on me last night. Didn't have any more that needed to be said. Can't think of anything that needs to be said now, or that I need to listen to now. I've got a project I have to stay on top of, so you just go ahead and enjoy your long weekend with whomever it is you are sharing a bed with. There was a loud sigh of exasperation, and then Nora Bethany said, Walter, you do know that I love you, right? No, I don't know that anymore. If you loved me, truly loved me, this weekend wouldn't have happened. Even then, knowing what I'm thinking, I noticed that you didn't get in your car and race home to try and save your marriage. You can doubt it if you want, but I do love you, Walter, more than you can possibly realize. So please understand that I'm not saying this to hurt you. You could not bother going to work for a month, and it wouldn't affect your job. You could walk into Jared's office and piss in the potted plant in the corner, and all Jared would do is smile at you. I don't understand, Nora Bethany. What are you saying? Walter, You are a regional manager, and you will be Benson's replacement because Jared and I have been having an affair for the last 6 years. Don't let the news upset you, Walter. I love you. I really do. I sat there, phone to my ear, but stunned into silence. 6 years? She had been screwing my boss for 6 years? She had been screwing that son of a bitch for 6 years? I was a regional manager because she was screwing Jared? I hadn't gotten the job because of my hard work? Walter? Walter, are you still there? Yes, dear. We will talk about this when I get home. Yes, dear, whatever you say. I hung up the phone and then I sat there and stared at the wall. I spent the rest of the day stumbling around in a fog. I'd busted my butt for years to climb the corporate ladder only to find out that I didn't have anything to do with my success. I find out that my wife is a cheating 304 and had been for at least the last 6 years. And with Jared, my wife, born and bred in the South, was having an affair with another man. Not just another man, but one who was old enough to be her father. I tried to imagine his big body on top of my small white wife, and the image made me sick to my stomach. All the times he had smiled at me and shaken my hand, he was thinking, "I'm screwing your wife, stupid," and I smiled back at him and shook his hand. I wondered how it started, but then I realized that it didn't matter. The only thing that mattered now was that it did start. Then I thought, that's 6 years with Jared. How many and for how long before Jared? Hell, if she was doing it while we were married, she was probably doing it while we were going steady and while we were engaged. Then I had a really bad thought. Were my kids really my kids? Obviously, none of them were Jared's, but could one or more be someone else's? 7 that evening, Nora Bethany called again. Are you okay, Walter? Just peachy. Nora Bethany, just peachy. So, tell me, is he with you now like he was the first time you called me? No, Walter, and I'm sorry about that. It was inexcusable of me. He isn't here right now. The reason I called, baby, is to apologize for how I dropped this on you. I should have waited and explained it to you face to face. What's to explain? You pretty much said it all. You let me know that I'm not worth a shit at my job and that the only reason I have one is that you are screwing my boss. Which, by the way, tells me that as far as you are concerned, I'm not worth a shit in bed either. I'd say that pretty much covers it all. It isn't that way, baby. You earned all your promotions. I didn't buy them for you. I just meant to say that you didn't have to worry about your job. As far as your abilities in bed are concerned, I'm perfectly happy with you. I love you, Walter. Honest to God, I do. That doesn't compute, Nora Bethany. If you were perfectly happy with me, why are you screwing Jared? You say that you love me, but how could you have done this to me if you really loved me? This weekend was never about the two of us from the start. It was always going to be for you and Jared. You and Jared both knew how I would respond to the project and trouble story. You both knew I wanted Benson's job and that I would leap at the chance to save the day. The two of you played me like a piano, and I made the music you expected me to. You probably would have gotten away with it too if you had slipped up and made that offhand comment about not being alone. You say that you love me? It has been 3 days now, Nora Bethany. 3 days during which you know that I know what is going on up there. But I notice that you still aren't here trying to find some way save anything from the mess you made. Goodbye, and I hung up on her. After hanging up on Nora Bethany, the phone started ringing almost every hour on the hour, and the caller ID showed as Aspen area code, so I never bothered answering it. I took the phone off the hook when I went to bed, and when I woke up in the morning, I put the handset back in the cradle, and it rang almost immediately. Caller ID said Aspen again, so I ignored it and went and took my shower. It was still ringing when I left the house for work. I stopped at Denny's for breakfast, and when I got to work, Stella, my secretary, greeted me with, "Your wife has been trying to reach you. She asked me to have you call her at this number as soon as you came in." I took the piece of paper she handed to me and watched her raise her eyebrows as I wadded it up and tossed it in the wastebasket without even looking at it. No calls from her, Stella. Just tell her I'm out of the office. I'm sorry, Mr. Hamilton, but I won't lie. I'll take messages, or I'll tell her you told me not to put her calls through. But if you are here, I won't tell her that you aren't. Thank you, Stella. I needed that. Needed what, Mr. Hamilton? After the weekend I've just had, it is nice to know that there are still honest women around. I took the paperwork on the troubled project and ripped it to shreds and dropped it on Jared's desk, and then I went into my office and busied myself with making phone calls. I took everything in me in basket and dumped it into the wastebasket and started cleaning out my desk. At 10, Stella came in. Your wife has called 4 times, and I've told her that you wouldn't take her calls, and she said fine. Tell him that I'll just have Jared call him. See if he refuses that call. Could I ask what is going on here? It would seem, Stella, that your employer and my wife are upset that I found out they spent the weekend together in Aspen and then had the temerity to get pissed about it. Well, since I won't talk to Jared either, and he is your boss, I guess I need to get you out of the line of fire. You can honestly say that I am out of the office if either of them calls again, and I got up and left. I went home and took the phone off the hook and got busy doing what needed to be done. I didn't go into work at all on Tuesday. At 6 Tuesday evening, I put the phone back on the hook and finished up what I was doing. At 9, I heard a car door slam, and a minute or so later, I heard Nora Bethany holler out, "Honey, I'm home." I didn't answer back and just waited for her to come find me. It was a very awkward moment when she walked into the kitchen followed by Jared. She walked over to me and bent to kiss me and got a very surprised look on her face when I turned my head away. The surprised look turned into a hurt look, and then she said, "Why haven't you been answering the phone, and why wouldn't you take my calls at work?" "Because we don't have anything to say to each other anymore." Obviously, I didn't do a very good job of explaining things. I thought that might be it, so I persuaded Jared to come home with me so we could sit down and talk about this like adults. I almost smiled at that. "Well, yes, I guess that would be good. Being like adults, I mean. Why don't you open a bottle of wine and pour us all a glass so we can relax?" "Yes, dear. What would you like?" "I think we still have a couple of bottles of the Jacob's Creek Merlot left." "Coming right up," I said as I got up and went down to the basement where we kept the wine rack. I took a bottle of the Merlot back to the kitchen, and as I poured the 3 glasses, I was wondering why I hadn't just gotten up, stomped the shit out of Jared, and then tossed the 2 of them out of the house. I think it was because of the everything is fine attitude that Nora Bethany was exhibiting, and I just wanted to see how stupid she thought I really was. I took the wine over to the table and then sat down to see what was going to happen next. Nora Bethany took a sip of her wine, and then she started talking. "First, Walter, you have to understand that my love for you is deep and unconditional. You are my life, and you must believe that. I love you and only you, and I don't want to spend my life with anyone else. That said, I've become attached to Jared in a way that I can't fully explain. I don't love him. I never have, but there's something about him that keeps drawing me back. It's not about emotion. It's purely a physical thing. He means nothing to me otherwise." Then Jared spoke up. "It's true, Walter. I'm in love with Nora Bethany and have been for years. I've begged her to leave you and be with me, but she refuses. She loves you and won't leave. So I take what I can get and try to be happy with that. So, you see, Walter, you have nothing to worry about. I love you and only you." "Well, I guess that makes it all better," Walter said sarcastically. "So, this is just about some unexplainable attachment and nothing else. Silly me. Here I was worrying for nothing. I'm glad we got that cleared up, baby. Why don't you just go on upstairs to the bedroom while I say goodnight to Jared? I'll be up in a little while, and we can make love." I looked at her and started laughing. I laughed so hard that I had tears in my eyes. I got myself under control, and then I backhanded Jared so hard that he and his chair went backwards onto the floor. He scrambled to get up, and by the time he was on his feet, I was standing in front of him, and I smashed him in the mouth 3 times, and he went back down. I kicked him 3 times hard in the crotch, and then I leaned down, grabbed his shirt front, and pulled his face up to within inches of mine. "Consider that my resignation, you son of a bitch," and then I slammed his head back down on the floor and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" asked Nora Bethany. "I'm going home." "Home? You are home." "No, I'm not. When I found out what you were doing, my first thought was to throw your cheating butt out on the street. Then I thought of all the memories of you that the house would keep pushing at me, and I decided that I would be the one to get out. I rented an apartment Monday, and I spent yesterday moving into it. That's my home now. Don't do this to me, Walter. I love you. You know I do. I don't want you to leave me. Please, Walter, I don't want to lose you. You should have thought of that before you decided to get involved with Jared. And while we're on the subject, Nora Bethany, even if I believed your excuse about being addicted to him, there had to be a first time with Jared when you didn't yet know all the things you claim to now. Were you still my loving wife then? Was I still the one you wanted to be with when you were with him the first time? Were you concerned about losing me then, Nora Bethany? I turned and walked out the door while she kept crying out for me not to go. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
Your sweet lips. Put your sweet lips a little closer to the phone. Let's pretend that we're together, all alone. I'll tell the man to turn the jukebox way down low. And you can tell your friend there with you he'll have to go. Kelly and I had met about 6 months ago at a dance club in Petaluma, north of San Francisco. I had gone with a couple of girls I worked with, Marcia and Julie. They wanted someone to help keep the wolves off. They wanted to choose, not be chosen. That was okay with me. I had been feeling melancholy. I'm not sure why. It's like something was going to happen, something that would make me sad. When you are like that, it seems to feed off itself. The girls were dancing and I was sitting at the table, staring into my beer when I sensed a presence next to me. I held still for a minute. I guess hoping whoever it was would go away. Finally, I looked up and immediately forgot my beer. A young lady. In my mind, I never saw a girl or a woman. Strange that. Stood there with a smirk on her face. I looked closer. There was something about her. Something. She wasn't beautiful, but yet she was. She had dishwater blonde hair cut short. A pixie face with a cute, upturned nose. Not really tall, maybe 5 feet 6 inches, slender but curvy, probably a little underweight for her height. She had a white blouse with a black skirt. The blouse was my favorite type, kinda off the shoulder with elastic around the top, I guess what you would call a scoop neck. She was leaning over a little bit, ready to say something to me. It was a nice lacy white bra to match the blouse. I was in love for the first time in my life. If you were not too wrapped up in that beer, would you dance with me? What beer? I mumbled as I tried to unwind from the chair. As I stood up, my feet did something with each other, independent of any plan of mine, and I lurched into this mystery that had appeared in front of me. Laughing, she said, you are an even better dancer than what Julie told me, as she pulled me onto the dance floor. Whisper to me. Whisper to me. Tell me, do you love me true? Or is he holding you the way I do? Though love is blind, make up your mind. I've got to know. Should I hang up? Or will you tell him he'll have to go? Luckily for me, the song was fast and loud. I was able to gather my wits and do a credible job with the dance. The next number was a little slower and we were able to talk. Laughing again, she said, I'm Julie's cousin. She didn't know I was going to be here, but we ran into each other in the restroom. She told me that you were watching out for them, and I thought that was sweet. She was going to introduce us, but a guy she wanted to meet asked her to dance. She pointed to where you were and told me to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Kelly. She smiled as she leaned back and put out her hand. I'm Mark, I said as I shook hands with her. I'm sorry I stepped on your foot before we even started dancing. She smiled and said, you are more than making up for it. You actually dance very well. Could I ask what you were looking at in your beer? I almost blurted, there was a tear in my beer, but managed instead to say with some small amount of charm, I was waiting for you to show up and I didn't want to be bothered by any of the other girls. She stopped dancing for a minute, looking at me with a serious look on her face. She started chuckling, you're pretty smooth for a guy that can't even stand up without falling over. She leaned in a little closer, putting her arm around me. We sat out a couple of dances and had a beer and got to know about each other. I was 28 and an assistant winemaker at one of the nicer wineries in the Alexander Valley. Marcia and Julie worked in the tasting room. I had gone to UC Davis to get my degree in enology. I dated a few girls, but I told her, I've only fallen in love once though. I didn't tell her it was with her. Kelly had gone to school at the University of San Francisco, majoring in marketing. She was working in the marketing department of one of the telecom startups in Petaluma. The bandleader announced that they would play a waltz and then take a break. We stood up and started dancing, a little closer this time, as the band played Tennessee Waltz. As we danced, Kelly at first looked a little sad, then a bit angry. It made me a bit nervous since I was really starting to like her. After the dance, we went out front to get some fresh air. I love that song, she said. It always makes me sad, but a little mad too. You know the part where it goes. I was dancing with my darling to the Tennessee Waltz when an old friend I happened to see. I introduced him to my loved one, and while they were dancing, my friend stole my sweetheart from me. How could a girl be with another guy and do that to him? It just makes my blood boil. I felt relieved that it wasn't anything I had done, and actually a little thrilled because it sounded like she would be very loyal. Sweet words to me. I took her hand and didn't say anything, and after a while we went back in. Later she took me home since I had ridden with the girls. Marcia was the designated driver. When we got to my townhouse, we chatted for a minute, and then I got out and went around to her window. I told her how much I enjoyed the evening and asked her if I could take her to dinner the next week. She said she would love to and gave me her phone number. I started walking away, paused, and turned back to her. Kelly, I probably shouldn't say this, but you know I love you, don't you? Grinning, she answered, of course, you dummy. You wear your heart on your sleeve. Shaking her head, but with a smile, she backed her car around and left. You can't say the words. You can't say the words I want to hear. While you're with another man. If you want me, answer yes or no. Darling, I will understand. We started dating regularly. That first dinner I was going to take her out on turned out to be dinner at her place. She had the left half of a one-story duplex in Katati and lived by herself. She rented it furnished, so the furniture didn't reflect her taste. I noticed that it even had old-fashioned shades instead of blinds. She had insisted the owner install curtains for the front window since it was next to the entry door. With the shades down, you could still see shadows. Silhouettes really. On the shades at night when someone would pass in front of a light. That first dinner turned out to be quite nice. Kelly had a great sense of humor, a sort of sardonic wit. We laughed a lot, and it turned out she was a great cook. I was rewarded with a somewhat more than chaste kiss goodnight. I had been careful not to mention love again. I didn't want to spook her. I learned my lesson growing up in western Kansas hunting quail and shikar. Too sudden a move scared off the quarry. Not that I considered Kelly quarry. Our relationship grew closer every time we saw each other. Kelly turned out to be a very caring, loving person. We never seemed to fight about anything. She was fun to be with and sexy as hell without trying. We gradually became more intimate, certainly a lot of very hot kisses. Fondling became a regular thing. Passion became a passion for both of us. We had not made love as yet. I felt she would if I pushed it, but I wanted the time to be right. I had a plan. I felt Kelly loved me as much as I did her, even though she hadn't actually said the word as yet. Maybe I was being a little presumptuous, but I felt a marriage proposal would be well received by her. I rounded up in order: an engagement ring, a dozen pink roses, and a beautiful card that said the loving words I had trouble getting off my tongue without twisting them all around. I wanted to surprise her with my proposal. This might have been somewhat rash given what happened that night when I went to change our lives forever. Instead of doing this on an evening when we had something planned, I went over when she wasn't expecting me. She said she was staying in to do her hair, clean the duplex, and watch an old movie. I thought it would be fun to catch her with her hair down, so to speak. Little did I know. Your sweet lips. Put your sweet lips a little closer to the phone. Let's pretend that we're together, all alone. I'll tell the man to turn the jukebox way down low. And you can tell your friend there with you he'll have to go. I got to her place, found a place to park, and walked to her door. The way the place was set up, you had to walk in front of her front window to get to the door. As I walked past the window, I glanced at the shade. I stopped suddenly in shock at what I saw. The shade was down, but the curtain wasn't pulled. Silhouetted on the shade was the crisp outline of a couple engaged in an apparently passionate embrace. I couldn't see any details, but it was clear, at least, that a very intimate kiss was taking place. I stood there for a long minute staring. I had heard of people saying their brain had frozen in a moment of shock. Now I understood what that was like. My life ended right then. My mouth tasted of ashes. Finally, I pulled myself together, feeling a sudden rage. If I were to suffer, why should I suffer alone? I wanted confrontation. I wanted to throw the ring and the roses in her cheating face. Damn her. I stepped to the door and pushed the button. I heard the doorbell sound and stood there ready to barge in and have my confrontation. I panicked. I couldn't do this. I turned and ran to my car and, as I had done a few years earlier, got the hell out of Dodge. I got to my place, tears streaming down my face as I staggered out of the car. As I opened the door, I noticed that I didn't have the card or the roses. I must have dropped them when I ran from Kelly's apartment. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I realized that I didn't want to be alone then. I guess I was afraid of what I might do. I went to a nearby dive, a country kind of place, and started sucking up a pitcher of beer. I liked this joint because it was totally unpretentious. It was what it was, exactly. After all the posturing I saw in the wine business, it was always a great place for me to just be myself. It was near Guerneville, close to the Russian River, in a stand of pines. It, naturally enough, was called Cabin in the Pines. Its one redeeming feature was a really beautiful pine bar running down one side and pine tables along the other. As a kid growing up in Dodge City, I heard nothing on the radio but country music. Something in the songs, seemingly mostly sad, struck a chord in me. There was a pathos that echoed in some sadness within me. The one really special thing about this bar was a jukebox with the old country songs on them. It had all the great ones: Hank Williams, Farron Young, Jim Reeves, even some of the real old-timers like Tex Tyler, Spade Cooley, and Hank Penny. As I sat there, not exactly nursing my beer, someone played "He'll Have to Go" by Jim Reeves. This had always been one of my favorites, but for the first time in years, I really listened to the words. They hit me hard. This was what I was feeling. This was what I wanted to tell Kelly. I thought about calling her, but I was afraid of what she might say. I got some notepaper from the guy behind the bar, paper he used to make notes on what he needed to order. I started writing, some tears dropping unnoticed on the paper, and wrote this letter to Kelly. Dear Kelly, you knew from the first day we met how much I loved you. I don't have the words to express the depth of this love. You haven't explicitly said that you loved me, but I have sensed that you do. If I'm wrong, I apologize for my presumptuousness. I came by earlier tonight for what I hoped would be the bright dawn of a great love between us. A forever kind of love. I'm ashamed to say I saw you kissing someone as I passed your front window. The silhouettes on the shade were clear. I couldn't stay. I left. Kelly, I came to see you tonight to surprise you, to propose, to ask your hand in marriage. I guess I haven't really had any right to expect you to see only me. Truthfully, it didn't even occur to me that you would be seeing someone else. But Kelly, dearest, I can't share your heart with another. If it's me you love, you have to tell the man that was there with you that he will have to leave. If you love him, I understand, and it's my failing, not yours. I can't share your love. Again, I'm sorry, but you will have to choose. Yours in love, Mark. P.S. Sorry for the spots on the paper. It must have been the condensation from the beer. I gave up on the beer, went to a grocery store and bought stamps and envelopes, and dropped the letter in the mailbox. I stopped by my place and grabbed a few clothes and my shaving kit and went to the winery. I kept a cot in my office for the busy period during crush and fermentation. I took a shower, grabbed the wine thief, and sucked out a liter decanter of cab that was about ready for bottling. The next morning I talked to Joe Hines, the winemaker, and asked if it would be okay for me to disappear for a couple of days. He was fine with it, and I ran up to a stretch of the Eel River where I had always had good luck fishing. I thought it through, over and over. It always came out the same. Simply put, I loved Kelly. She either loved me or not. She would marry me or not. If not, I would just have to move on. I left very early the next morning and got home around 6. As I put the keys on the table next to the door, I saw an envelope. Picking it up, "My melancholy baby" was written on the outside the envelope. Opening it, I pulled out a letter. It read, "Come to me, my melancholy baby. Cuddle up and don't be blue. All your fears are foolish fancy, maybe. You know, dear, that I'm in love with you. Yours always, Kelly." Stunned, I grabbed the phone, but realized it was too early to call. I went into the bedroom to take a shower and sleep for a couple of hours. As I opened the door, Kelly was sitting on the side of the bed, rubbing her eyes. Hearing the door open, she jumped up and threw herself at me. "Oh God, Mark. I'm so sorry for what you went through. I love you. I love only you. I'm sorry I never told you. I was sure you knew." Then she was kissing me, and we fell on the bed. I didn't stop to figure out what was going on. Later would be time enough for that. Now there was an urgency between us that needed to be satisfied. We explored each other, at first in haste, and then slowly with the touches only lovers have. She was sweet and she was passionate, by turns. Later, lying there entwined, she explained. "As I told you, I wasn't expecting anyone. It was a down evening for me, just to catch up with things. Julie and Tony, you remember. She met him the same night we met at the dance. Anyway, that afternoon he popped the question, and they stopped by to tell me. She was so excited. She was just glowing. Anyway, from what we could figure out, Julie and Tony were in the living room, obviously holding each other close. I was in the kitchen making some coffee. My hair was in curlers and I had an old robe on. We heard the doorbell, but no one was there. Julie looked down and saw the card and the flowers. From the card we saw that it was you that had stopped by, and you must have seen Julie and Tony kissing. God, Mark. I read the card and cried for hours. I tried to call you, but there was no answer. I called Joe at the winery, and he told me you were going fishing for a couple of days. Then the next day I got your letter. I've slept here for the last 2 nights waiting for you to come home. You doofus. You should know you are the only man for me." I got up, somehow knowing that now was not the time to say anything. I got the ring from my billfold and slipped it on her finger. Kissing the ring, then her lips, we sealed a love that would burn brightly forever. I never again had that sadness, that melancholy. I never dwelled on what had happened. Our love was all I needed. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.